I'd like to call to order today's Metropolitan Area Planning Commission meeting. If we could have our opening comments, please.
Before we begin the agenda, the Wichita-Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Planning Commission and the Wichita-Sedgwick County Board of Zoning Appeals would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this public hearing. For those in attendance, copies of the agenda for today's meeting, the public hearing procedure, and Planning Department staff reports on all agenda items are available in the lobby. The Planning Commission's and the BZA's bylaws limit the applicant on a zoning, subdivision, or variance application and his or her representatives to a total of 10 minutes of speaking time at the start of the hearing on that item, plus up to 2 minutes at the conclusion of that hearing. All other persons wishing to speak on agenda items are limited to 3 minutes per person. However, if they feel that it is needed and justified, the chairman may extend these times by up to 2 minutes. All speakers are requested to state his or her name and address for the record when beginning to speak. When you are finished speaking, please share your name, address, and the case number on the sheet provided in the room. This will enable staff to notify you if there are any additional proceedings concerning that item. All speakers at the podium, please remove your face mask before speaking into the microphone. Please note that all written and visual materials you present to the Commission and the Board will be retained by the Secretary as part of the official record. If you are not speaking, but you wish to be notified about future proceedings on a particular case, please provide your contact information to the Planning Department. The Planning Commission and the Board are interested in hearing the views of all persons who wish to express themselves on all the agenda items. However, we ask that all speakers please be as courteous and concise as possible and avoid long repetitions of facts or opinions which have already been stated. For your information, the Wichita City Council has adopted a policy for all city zoning items. A copy of this policy is available from the planning staff. The City Council relies on a written record of the Planning Commission hearings and does not conduct its own additional public hearings on these items. The decision of the BZA is final. Any appeal of a decision of the BZA is to the District Court.
Thank you for the opening comments there. Before we start going through the agenda to decide which items we are actually going to need to hear and those that we will take on consent, I wanted to advise not only everybody here in the council chambers, but also those that are attending virtually. As of this morning, there are 2 cases that we will not be hearing today. One of those would be agenda item 4.5, which is Con 2021-00024, located at 4525 East Central. That item has been withdrawn. Also, agenda item 4.9, which is a PUD 2021-00009, located at 2207 West McCoy Street, has been deferred to be heard at a yet-to-determined date. So if you're here for either one of those 2 cases, we will not be hearing those today. And with that, we'll start going through our agenda. First, we have approval of our MAPC meeting from May 20th, and I show Foster, Nix, Hartman, and Joe Johnson to be absent.
Move for approval. As presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Warren, second by Mr. Bill Johnson to approve as presented. Are there any questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Our public hearing vacation items, our first item is vacation 2021-00020. It's vacation of a setback at a property located at 2719 Timber Lane Street. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, is there anyone in the council chambers that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? Vacation 2021-00020, located at 2719 Timber Lane Street. Hearing nobody, we will take that on consent. Next, we have vacation 2021-00021. It's a vacation of a side yard setback on lots 1 through 8, Block A, North Gate 4th Addition, located at 2500 through 2624 West 55th Street North. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, is there anyone in the council chambers that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? Vacation of side yard setbacks located on West 55th Street North. Hearing none, we'll take that on consent. Next, we have vacation 2021-00022, request to vacate a platted street in limited industrial area located at 3512 North Webb Road. It's in the Jabbar Airport area. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anyone in the council chambers that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case located at Jabbar Airport? Hearing none, we'll take that on consent, and the next item has been withdrawn. So, thank you.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Hartman, second by Mr. Joe Johnson, to approve items 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3 on consent. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Our public hearing cases, starting with conditional 2021-00020, conditional use for rock crushing on property zoned SF5, located north of 71st Street, south and Hydraulic, approximately 68th Street and Hydraulic. Is there anyone that would like to hear this case on the commission? We will hear this case. Next, we have conditional case. Yeah, well, I'm sorry. Yeah, at this point, just to clarify for anybody that may be confused what's going on, we are going through every one of these cases to see which ones we need to hear and which ones we won't hear. And then we will go back and start at the top and work our way through the cases that we're going to hear. So thank you for your attention to what we're doing. Next up, we have conditional 2021-00021, conditional use for an accessory apartment in SF5 located at 1612 North Westland. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anyone in the chambers that would like to hear this case? we will hear this case. Next, we have Conditional 2021-00022. It's a conditional use to allow an accessory dwelling unit on property zoned SF5 located at 318 South Herschel Avenue. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anyone in the chambers that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case located at 318 South Herschel Avenue? Hearing none, we will take this one on consent. Next, we have Conditional 2021-0023, conditional use to allow daycare on property zoned SF5, located at 6,000 East Harry. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, is there anyone in the chambers that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? Conditional use to allow daycare at 6,000 East Harry. Hearing none, we will take this one on consent. As I noted earlier, this next case, Con 2021-00024, has been withdrawn. Next, we have CUP 21-00018. It's a minor amendment to DP 295 to permit a car wash on property zoned limited commercial. This car wash is located on North Maze Road. For your information, because I know we have another car wash that's going to be heard later. So is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, is there anyone in the chambers that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? Minor amendment to DP 295 for a car wash on North Maze Road. Hearing none, we'll take this on consent. Next, we have city zone change, PUD 21-0006, to create Northgate 4th Edition PUD number 86, located at 55th Street North and Meridian. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, is there anyone in the chambers that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? Located at 55th Street North and Meridian. Hearing no one, we will take this one on consent. Next, we have PUD 21-0008. It's a city amendment to PUD 61, located at West Maple and South McLean. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, is there anyone in the chambers that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case?
Yes, there is.
Okay, we will hear this case. Do we have the agent or applicant for this case present? We do? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gunzelman. The next case, as I stated previously, has been deferred to a undetermined date in the future. Next, we have Zone 2021-00023, a zone change on property zoned SF5, limited to, SF5 single family to limited industrial, located at 5727 South Hydraulic. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case?
Yes.
Okay, we will hear this case. Is the agent or applicant here or virtually?
Yes, this is Mark Dayton with Young and Associates, agent for the applicant.
Thank you very much. Next, we have zoning 2021-00024, change from SF5 to TF3, located approximately 1,600 feet south of 47th Street South and 1,650 feet west of South Meridian. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case?
Yes.
Okay, we will hear this case. Is the agent or applicant, I think I saw Kirk in here, yep, thank you. Next item, number 12, has been deferred. .413, we have Zone 2021-00031, city zone change from single-family residential to limited industrial, located at 331 West 47th Street South. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Hearing nobody, is there anyone in the chambers that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? Located at 331 West 47th Street South. Hearing none, we'll take this one on consent. And this next case, car wash up on 21st Street, we will hear this case. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve agenda items 4.3, 4.4, 4.6, 4.7, 4.8, 4.10,
4.8.
4.8, no.
excuse me, yeah.
Yep.
No,
We'll leave that one.
4.13 and 4.14.
No, not 4.14.
1, 2, and 1, 3.
1.3, excuse me, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so,
Can we do that, try that again?
could you
make sure we
repeat
got it
that
right?
motion, please?
Approve 4.3, 4.4, 4.6, 4.7. 4.13.
Second.
All right. We have a motion made by Mr. Warren, second by Ms. Foster. Are there any questions on the motion? Not now. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. And our last item we will hear, which is city annexation case. We have no BZA meeting today. And I need to make sure that on this first case, I didn't ask if the agent or applicant was available and online, and so I don't know. It'd be Martin Central Sand Company, Steve Martin, or Larry Henning. Are you online?
No, he's a woman.
You are? Okay, thank you very much. We will hear that case now then. We will have the city present that, and then we'll invite the agent up after that.
Good afternoon, Kathy Morgan, Senior Planner for the Planning Commission, for the Planning Department. This is a conditional use for a rock crushing operation. It is on single-family residential zone property, 1.7 acres, and it's east of Hydraulic on the south side of East 68th Street South. This area has been, would you please, Paul, go to the aerial? As you can see, this is to the north is some industrial wrecking salvage. To the east is construction debris and also wrecking salvage. And just to the east of that is a manufactured home subdivision. And to the north of the wrecking and salvage is Pine Bay, thank you, Pine Bay subdivision. And so this area, the adjacent land use are non-conforming. West of the property side or southwest is the Mitch Mitchell floodway. There are no public services to this site, no water, no sewer. According to the Community Investment Plan 2035 Wichita Future Growth Map, the locational guidelines recommend that this is to be residential, as does the Hayesville, South Wichita Hayesville plan identifies this as residential. Land use compatibility recommends that industrial and major commercial land uses that generate pollution, odor, noise, light, safety hazards, and high levels of traffic should be located away from residential areas and developed with screening, buffering, and site design features sufficient to mitigate adverse impacts. The recommendation of staff is to deny this application based on the following findings of the zoning uses and character of the neighborhood, with it being surrounded with significant residential development on the north and east side. The suitability of the property is a non-conforming use. This property was annexed by the city in early 2000, according to the historic aerials. This area has been used in the past for wrecking and salvage, and the sand, gravel, rock crushing is a relatively new operation to this area, with at least since 2014, according to the maps that I had available. As I said, this area is recommended for low-density residential use, and they are requesting, for the rock crushing, they are requesting that that the operation will only be for 4 to 5 weeks out of the year. They would bring in rented equipment, do the rock crushing, remove it, and then sell the recycled materials. If the Planning Commission should determine that they want to have alternate findings, there are conditions that staff recommends be placed on the conditional use. These are recommendations that we have put in rock crushing applications before. A limited time period, 7 a.m. To 6 p.m. Again, the number of weeks it can operate during the year, that it be developed, the site should be developed in conformance with the site plan. The applicant's hired rock crushing company has to meet and get air permits from KDHE and the equipment has to be subject to the EPA regulations for water to reduce dust, reduce noise, that type of thing. All vehicular drives on the site shall be surfaced with an all-weather material, which may include crushed rock. However, again, this needs to have water available to wet that down to keep the dust down as much as possible. Access to the site is off south hydraulic. Can you go to the next slide, please? And then go forward again. This is the site plan that was submitted. And as I said, there are some already gravel piles out there. Go to the next slide, please. There you can see that. Back to the other. 68th Street is just on the north side of the bridge over the floodway off South Hydraulic. So you turn it onto 68th Street just before you cross the bridge, and that's the access that they will use. There is access by gravel road on over to Grove Street, but the main access is to be off hydraulic. If these conditions are not met, then the conditional use will be declared null and void. So that's just the standard conditional use language for rock crushing operations. And so will you go through the slides, please?
And Kathy Morgan, just one quick staff clarification is when you refer to the plan recommending low-density residential, that is a South Wichita Hayesville plan,
Right.
correct? And the comprehensive plan, in fact, does recommend industrial in this location. Is that
Okay,
correct?
yes, I'm sorry, I misspoke on that, yes. So, next slide, go through the slides, please. This is looking south at the site. That's their main gate entrances. As you can see, there are multiple stockpiles of recycled material. Next. This is at the corner of Minnesota and 68th Street, looking southwest at the site. As you can see in front, there are some stockpile of raw material that has not been crushed. Next. This is looking back northeast. The road at the bottom right is Minnesota, and you're looking, I'm sorry, that should be northwest. My fault. Northwest toward 68th Street. Next. This is directly north of the site. This is fencing that is blocking view of auto salvage. Next. Again, this is looking southeast at the site from East 68th Street. Next. This is looking east on East 68th Street where it dead ends into Minnesota. That is another construction inoperable vehicle location next. This is looking west along 68th Street. That's the north side of 68th Street, and the rock crushing would then be, you don't see it on the south side of the street next. And this is looking north on Minnesota, and the site is on the left. Across the street on the right is construction, salvage, unused construction implements, and some storage of materials. Next. And then this is looking west. Hydraulic would be the street behind those gravel piles. Next. And that shows the application sign, and you're looking west toward the entrance into the site. It would be right behind the pile of rubble on the right of your screen, and there's a fence that separates auto salvage from the rock crushing site. Next. Okay, I will stand for any questions.
Any questions for staff from the commission? Yes, Mr. McKay?
How many residential properties? I noticed on the plat, shows there's land platted to the north and to the east.
Uh-huh.
How many, in the area, I was trying to see in the area, how many single-family properties are on those areas where they got storage and stuff on the north and east?
Okay, if you look at the zoning map on page 5 of your staff report, all of those lots that are red, which is the manufactured homes, all of those lots are occupied. That is fully developed. The lots to the north that are in Pine Bay, those, I don't know that all of them are filled in there, but I know that right there north of East 68th Street, there's that long piece that goes around the lake, and then there's a developed residential lot, a couple of lots right there.
Okay, with that, approximately, I'm gonna use from Minnesota Street and was it 68th Street?
Uh-huh.
From those right-of-ways, how far is it to those two locations you just mentioned?
They are right at 350 feet.
Okay, thank you.
And did someone else have a question? Mr. Hartman? Okay.
Right. It was, the notification area was 350 feet because the site was over 1 acre, and that's what we're required to notice.
Yes, Mr. Nix?
So, the length of time they're being used, is it 2 to 6 weeks or 4 to 5 weeks?
4 to 5 weeks is what they're saying. I may have put 6 weeks on there, but the applicant had requested 4 to 5 weeks out of the year.
Any other questions from the commission for the staff? Hearing none, if we could have the agent or applicant, you'd state your name and address for the record, and you have 10 minutes.
Blaine Martin, Central Sand Company, and address and concern is 1855 East 68th Street. We've been in business for right at 35 years, and we've got our place at 45th and Hoover in Wichita that we've done all of our crushing. We run water to all of our crushers. We own 2 of them, and that's the intent with this one as well. I know there's no water on site, but we have a portable truck that will go to a fire hydrant, get the water, and that will keep 99% of any dust down. So the dust is going to be mitigated to, as much as humanly possible. and which we've crushed on McConnell Air Force Base, Andover High School, with Dodge City Airport. Obviously, our north yard, we have a conditional use there, but with no issues whatsoever with the dust control. And our next part would be going ahead and, if you look back at the slides where the pictures are, should be a couple beyond it. Next one. So the, excuse me, the concrete blocks that are wrapping the site right now, the intent is to put up a full fence around it. So we're gonna take 2 of those concrete blocks, we're gonna stack them 2 high, which should put us roughly at 4 foot tall, all of them conjoining with a 4-foot chain link on top. Try to get some of the visual back, get everything cleaned up, mowed. Like I said, our big piece is, visual representation, just making sure that we're leaving a clean site when we're done. But our overall objective, south side of Wichita has very little rock access for, city projects, commercial projects, and our intent would be to sell this at a competitive price instead of having to go to a rock quarry. That would be either to Kugler in El Dorado or to our site in West Wichita. Supplying the south community with rock that's logistically cheaper too, by putting less trucks on the road. Could take less trucks to get it to a closer distance. Our intent is to be able to sell that rock at a cheaper rate, like I said, supply the south side of town, and then also off of our demo projects is take concrete in there, and so we don't have dump fees. There is no dump fees whatsoever. It will be open to the public if they need a place to dump concrete, asphalt, no trash, obviously, but yeah, our main objective would be to get everything cheaper as far as commercial, private, residential homes, city projects with rock going in and coming out. And I think that would be it for me.
Okay. Do we have any questions for the agent? Yes, Mr. Warren?
Now, staff recommendation on this one was to deny, but they gave us some recommendations. Should we decide to approve?
Yes, sir.
There were eight items identified as A through H on page 4 of our staff report.
Yes.
Are you in agreement with all of those items?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Hartman?
You mentioned dust mitigation by a water truck. How does that work with the rock crusher?
The truck itself has a gravity-fed bar on the back of it that will connect to the machine. It's got a clamp just like a fire hydrant, and it's gravity-fed, and it's got draw bars, and there's 2 of them, as the material is getting fed in and as the product's coming out. And it sprays all the material as it's going in and out.
And about how high of a pile do you end up with?
Roughly, those piles right there are roughly 30 foot. We do have a track stacker. If you guys would like to see it lower, we can certainly do so.
Are there any other questions for the agent from the commission? I've got just one. What kind of noise does this crusher
We're going to be,
produce?
at full production, you'd be roughly 100 decibels. If not, should be, with water being suppressed to it all the time, roughly 94. Less than your ambulance as it would drive by you significantly.
All right, any other questions from the commission? Yes, if you could step up to the podium so that we can hear your question, please, Shane.
As far as operating 2 to 6 weeks a year, is this going to be consistent or just on demand?
It'll be on demand, and I think we could do it in 4. Honestly, it's not going to be something that we're constantly down there whatsoever. I think we could do it in 4 to 5 weeks a year, and it wouldn't be in there very long at that. I think we could go less than that, but I don't want to go over-promise and underachieve.
Now, this is just kind of a general question. How is that kept track, the amount of time that you're actually crushing? Is that on the honor system, or is that, do you notify the city, or how
I
is
can't
that?
notify the city. I notify KDHE every time the crusher is moved. I have an air pollution permit that we pull every time that's mobilized or demobilized. And you have to state on there roughly how long you'll be there. And certain cases, it'll be just 1 week, and I won't be back for 6-8 months.
And then KDHE is the enforcement arm of this?
Yes, they have inspected us twice in the past year, making sure your crusher is where it is when you say it is.
And then are they aware of the fact that if we were to approve this, that you could only crush 5 weeks out of the year?
I can make, Vivian Smith is with KDHE, I can make her aware of it.
All right, any other questions? Hearing none, I'm going to open it up for comments and questions from people that are here to speak to it, and then you'll be able to come back up for a 2-minute rebuttal.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone in the council chambers here that would like to address the commission on this case? Seeing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? Is there somebody virtually that would like to address the commission on this case? If so, please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes. And make sure that you're unmuted. Wow.
We're getting feedback from an individual's, they're on a phone call, on a phone, I'm sorry. So we'll have to see if they're interested in speaking. Do you want to unmute them real quick? Is there anyone interested in speaking on this case? Sorry, it looks like that isn't going to work. Whoever it is, they have their microphone is picking up their speaker as well, so it's causing feedback.
Is there anyone else virtually that would like to address the commission on this case? Do we have initials or something for the person that was calling in?
We don't. They're just identified as caller number 7. And for our system, we can see them just in the order in which they've called in, but for them, they wouldn't know that they're identified as caller 7 on our end.
Well, it's disappointing that we can't hear their testimony. Do we have an option?
We can try one more time.
Lectured me about it.
Which number is this? 3?
By the day.
Is that the same?
It's the same, yeah. And I can't make out whether or not they're actually wanting to talk on the case or whether they're just talking amongst themselves.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Johnson.
Has staff heard any complaints from neighbors while this was published?
No, we did not. At the time, right before the meeting today, I had received no emails or phone calls on this item.
Another question, Kathy. You have any idea how long that salvage yard's been there?
As near as I could tell, Bill, it was, I looked as far back as the 1968 historic aerials, and there were a lot more cars there then than there are now.
Thank you.
Okay.
Related to that, real quick, if I may, sir. Kathy Morgan, was this case at the DAB last night? And was there any feedback at that meeting?
Yes, this case was heard by the DAB last night. They voted unanimously with one abstention to support the recommendation of staff to deny.
Okay.
But Kathy, was there an individual there who spoke on the case?
Oh, I I see.
Related to the question from the,
Yes, there was one member from the public that was there that spoke against approving, well, to approve or spoke for the denial, and then the rest of the discussion was from the DAB members.
Okay. And Ms. Fox, did you have a question?
I wanted to know if the neighborhoods surrounding this are predominantly renters or homeowners?
I have no way of knowing that. The neighborhood to the north, Pine Bay, are homeowners, but the manufactured housing zoning district to the east, I don't know what the percentage of renters may be in there, or if they are homeowners.
Okay. I ask only because the notification for them is often not received. Thank you.
Yeah, if they're renters, that's correct. They don't receive the notification.
Okay. All right, well, if we have nobody from the public that would like to address the commission on this, with the exception of possibly one that we cannot decipher what's being said, we'll bring it back to the agent. I don't know that there's really anything to rebut. If you do have 2 minutes to say anything that you might want to say pertaining to this, then we'll bring it back to the commission for action.
I guess just the last thing would be, as far as the neighbors would be concerned, we're not trying to change anything that's been going on there whatsoever. Mine is just getting it cleaned up, getting everything back organized. Putting our fence is gonna be up. Like I said, we're pretty keen on, home maintenance, if you will, just making a clean site. And like I said, we've got neighbors everywhere, obviously, and we're not here to try to be a nuisance by any stretch of the imagination. Okay, thank you, guys.
Right, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. McKay has a question for you, sorry.
You made a comment in your presentation a while ago about it was going to be open and people could bring their concrete and stuff in. How do you police that at all?
That will be more based on when it is open, and that's with us being on site.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Dewell?
What would the hours of operation of this crusher be during a day?
Probably closer to the 8 to 5. It takes a while to get set up in the morning, first and foremost, and then like to have the gate shut by 5, people getting home from work, no sense of hearing it.
Thank you.
I know item A says that the hours of operation would be 7 to 6. Are you wanting to say 8 to 5 then?
Yeah, if we could get, as far as the gate being open by 7, I would prefer that, and then we will close by 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Yep.
I just have one more question.
Yeah, Mr. McKay?
A comment was made about one of the picture I'm sitting here looking at. She said those, I call them pyramids, are 30 feet tall. You said you'd go for less with 20 feet?
Yeah, like I said, if it's a visual thing,
Yes.
absolutely. Now, once you start bringing that stacker down, instead of going the 30 feet tall, then you'll have it's gonna get more crowded in there. But it is an option, absolutely. If it is something that needs to be the height lessened, we can certainly do so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other?
I just want to make a statement.
Yeah, Cindy.
So I'm not going to be able, I'm going to have to not support approving this simply because we have a company that's been in business for 35 years and certainly is familiar with the rules, yet they've been crushing rock for quite some time, piling 30-foot high piles in an area that's surrounded by residential. And it's not until somebody brings that up that they decide to come forward and get a conditional use in order to do something that they've already been doing. And for that reason, I would have to be in favor of denial. Thank you.
If I can respond on that one. We just recently had purchased this piece of property. We crushed there for a previous owner who we were under the intention had a CU on this. So we just purchased this in February,
Okay,
and we have not touched it since. That is why I'm here.
okay. All right, well, thank you.
Yep.
For your testimony. And we'll bring it back to the commission for action. Mr. Warren?
I'm going to move that we approve the application stipulating that they agree to all the conditions of A through H on page 4 of the staff report, changing the hours of operation from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., maintaining a maximum of 5 weeks per year as stipulated in item A, and a maximum height of 30 foot.
You said 8 p.m.?
8 p.m.
8 or 5?
Because he was
Excuse
saying
me,
5
p.m.
He was saying 5 p.m.
5 p.m.
Yeah. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Been moved by Mr. Warren to approve the rock crushing operations with items A through H being identified as being agreed upon by the agent, changing the hours of operation from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. It was seconded by Mr. Bill Johnson. And Mr. Dooley, you have a question?
I wonder if we should also add, as the applicant discussed, that KDHE be informed of the conditions and the number of days that you're going to be operating this, and also that the piles be reduced to 20 feet.
Okay.
Discussion.
I would, from a motion standpoint, I could agree to the notification to KDHE. I would rather have fewer tall piles than more short piles.
I'd agree.
Okay.
Mr.
So
Green?
adding the KDHE
We
notification.
have somebody on the virtual.
Yes, Joe? Joe
I have a
Johnson?
question for the owner. I have a question for the owner. When you bought this property, was it disclosed to you that they were doing something illegal?
Joe, could you repeat your question, please?
I say, when you brought, this is to the owner. When you bought this property, did the owner disclose to the new owner that he was doing something illegal on the site?
No, I was unaware of that.
Okay.
So it was never disclosed?
I have no, yeah, I didn't honestly know anything about it.
Okay,
Thank you.
you bet. Any other questions on the motion, Mr. Warren?
Well, the reason I'm in favor of approving this is that this is not going to change the nature of this neighborhood one way or the other. It has been a pretty rough area, industrial in nature with salvage property, so we're not doing anything that's going to make be detrimental to the people that are in the area. There's a pretty good buffer of industrial space between this operation and where the residential properties are, so that was the reason for my recommendation of approval.
Yeah, Mr. Johnson?
Yeah,
Bill?
I would second that also. The applicant, where they're recycling stuff is a real plus. Material costs are constantly going up. By having another location where they're doing this, less time with trucks on highways and streets, I think it's a win-win deal. And I don't think anybody in that salvage yard is going to complain about what's going on.
I think.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Mr. Florence?
Is there any way we can put a time limit on this to be reviewed maybe in 5 years? Request.
I'm looking at staff, Mr. Florence, waiting for a response.
We have done that in the past with, on conditional use, to limit it to 3 to 5 years, and then request that the applicant comes back, and that can be approved for like an additional 2 years by the planning department as an administrative adjustment.
Yeah, Mr. Bill Johnson?
Kathy, most of those were ran more than 5 weeks a year though, weren't they?
The one that I can remember most recently is the rock crushing for the expansion of East Kellogg.
Yep.
Is the one I remember most recently.
And it's a conditional use, so if something happens in a year, it can be pulled. So I'm not in favor of putting time limit on it.
Okay. Mr. Warren?
I'll amend my motion to include the notification to the KDHE.
Okay,
I agree.
all right. So that's, yep, make that official. Okay. All right, any other questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.
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 It appears that Ms. Miles, Ms. Fox, and Mr. Florence were the nays, and the others were ayes. Do we want to confirm that with a roll call?
We can certainly do that.
Okay, we'll do a roll call.
Okay. This is on the motion to approve with the condition specified. Green?
Aye.
Bill Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. McKay?
Aye.
Gross? Fox?
Nay.
That was nay. Okay. Duel?
Aye.
Blick is absent. Nix?
Aye.
Foster?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Joe Johnson? Joe Johnson?
Unmute.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Miles?
Nay.
Hartman?
Aye.
Florence?
Nay.
10-3.
Yep, 10-3.
Motion carries 10-3. Next item, we have conditional 2121. And I'm sorry, is the agent or applicant here, the agent, and, okay, we do have somebody representing that, so. Mr. Longnecker.
Bill Longnecker, Senior Planner, current plans. As the chair noted, this is conditional use case 2021-00021. This is a request for an accessory apartment on single-family residential zoned property located at 1612 Northwest Lynn Avenue. As you can see from the zoning map, this is located north of Zoo Boulevard and west of West Street. This accessory apartment is currently under construction, and approval of conditional use would bring it into compliance with the Unified Zoning Code. The applicant has a building permit and has multiple inspections, and during the inspection period, the applicant was told that they need to apply for a conditional use because the permit did not match what they were actually building. Could we have an aerial, please? We haven't got a site plan for this. We're asking for one, but we've noted that the aerial that we have is recent enough that you can actually see pretty much as it is right now. You'll note that you can see the accessory apartment with the attached carport up in the northeast corner of the subject property. You can also make out the newly poured driveway coming off the existing drive back to the carport. And there is the single-family residence, primary residence. In the driveway, you see a storage container that up until the last time I was out there was still there. Could we go to the pictures of the neighborhood? That is the primary residence. There's the containers we were talking about. You can see the notification on that container. It's a 2-story residence, the only one on the block. Could we have the next one, please? That is the accessory apartment with the attached carport. You can see it's lap siding, bay window, that low pitch gable roof. Can we have the next, please? That's looking to the south of it. Behind the foliage there, you've got more single-family residence. Next one, please. That is looking from the site to their neighbors to the east. Single-family residence with a small accessory structure back there. Can we have the next slide, please? This is south of the site, looking from the driveway. You can see single-family residential. Next site, please. And that is to the west of the site. So we've got a established single-family residential neighborhood. Looking at random sampling of the houses in the area, it appears to be developed anywhere from mid-50s to the mid-70s. Most of these houses are 1-story, finished out with a mix of masonry lap siding. As far as staff could tell, looking at zoning maps and driving the neighborhood, this appears to be the first and only accessory apartment that would be in the neighborhood if this is approved. We've had quite a bit of phone calls on this particular case, objecting to it, objecting to not only the fact that that the accessory apartment is introducing a new use in the neighborhood, but that it was actually pretty close to being constructed at the time of this public hearing and at the DAB 6 meeting back on May 19th. Let's go back to the accessory apartment, please. There we go. So, we've got an accessory apartment that was being constructed prior to getting its conditional use application. And we've had a lot of objections to the process as well as this use being introduced. We've attached several letters to the conditional use report that we have that give details, objections to this. Looking at the confirmation to plans and policies, the staff has noted that the 2015-2035 Wichita Sedgwick County Investment Plans Future Growth Map. Could we show that, please? Shows us to be residential. And per that concept, this area described as residential encompasses the full diversity of residential development intensities and types typically found in large urban municipal areas. So you're looking at single family, you're looking at duplex, you're looking at some type of multifamily, or in this case, an accessory dwelling unit that could be permitted through the conditional use application. Looking at the other plans and policies, we're looking at the Wichita Established Central Area. This is an area composed of the core downtown area and mature neighborhoods within roughly a 3-mile range radius. And this is the focus of the Wichita Urban Infill Strategy. Staff felt like the accessory apartment conforms to this strategy. Because this is a conditional use, we have supplemental use regulations that we have listed on page 3 of your report. We've noted that at the time of this report that the application conforms to 1 and 2, and that it also must conform to regulations 3 and 4. I'm going to note from the podium that the accessory apartment is hooked up with the same meter as the primary structure in regards to public utilities, water and sewer. So it does meet supplemental use regulation number 4. Staff is recommending approval of this. We give the 5 conditions of approval that we've got listed on pages 3 and 4. And then also, because was a lot of concern about this being a type of Airbnb type of rental, we were allowed to approach the applicant and ask if they would accept condition 3, which is listed on page 4, saying that the accessory apartment should not be rented out to a person or persons who could occupy it for a period of less than 1 week at a time. You're looking at these accessory apartments, they don't have to be built for a member of the family, although a typical use would be an elderly parent perhaps going into the accessory apartment, or a member of the family that has a disability, or simply an older child that is still trying to make their way. So you've got that aspect. Nowhere in the supplemental use regulations does it say these units cannot be rented out. And in that case, you would be looking at something like what you see around universities, WSU, that they're rented out to students. The accessory apartment is there to basically support the activities that are going on that single-family residential property. And again, we typically look at these and we recommend approval of these accessory apartments if they conform to the plans and policies of that we've got to work with. We did note that this would be, as far as we know, the first accessory apartment in this neighborhood. That is one of the point of contentions with the neighbors, and that they would feel that it would change the character of the neighborhood, increase traffic, and ultimately be a rental. Again, staff is recommending condition. We felt like this did meet plans and policies in place, and except for the fact that the thing's almost completely built, which is an unnecessary complication, we would still make that recommendation regardless of the state of construction. I'll stand for questions.
Questions for staff? Mr. Nix?
So, I don't know if it's an appropriate question, but do we know who built?
I'm sorry, what?
Do we know who built this apartment?
The applicant answered that they did hire a construction company. Building permits were pulled, inspections were conducted. Ultimately, it's the homeowner who's responsible in regards to making sure those permits are pulled. But my understanding is that they were pulled, and therefore the inspections were made. One other thing I need to mention, that I did say this was heard by the DAB May 16th, and the recommendation of the DAB was to approve unanimously per the conditions put out by staff.
Okay, yes, Mr. Warren?
Bill, the aerial photo that we've got here is kind of a small sampling of the neighborhood. One of the pictures you showed had a house down the street that had a fairly large structure in the backyard. The problem here is not the size or the nature of the structure itself, it's just the use. Is that the gist of any complaints that have come in, is the fact that it might be a rental but not the building itself?
The objections have been to the use, which is an accessory apartment, and introducing a new use to the neighborhood. And two, it's been under construction and it's almost completed. Not to the size of it, not to the location, just its use and its state of construction.
It doesn't seem to me, from an aerial standpoint, it doesn't seem to be out of character with the neighborhood.
I'm sorry, what?
So from an aerial standpoint, it doesn't seem to be out of character with the neighborhood. There are other neighbors that have got structures in their backyard that look to be almost as large as this,
well,
just in this little sample.
If you go back to that, we had a photo of the property to the east, which had looked like some type of accessory structure back there. But again, we could find no conditional use applications, and as far as we could tell from the street, this would be the first and only accessory apartment.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission for staff? Hearing none, if we could have the agent or applicant come forth and state your name and address for the record, and you have 10 minutes. you can,
Oh, sorry.
thank you.
My name is Marcia Haig. I live at 1612 West Lynn. I've lived there for almost 45 years with my husband and 7 children. And thank you. My husband passed away about 4 years ago, and it's, like you said, it's a 2-story house, and it's just way too big for me. And my family, we talked about it, and all agreed that my daughter and her husband and their children I would sell the house to them, and they would build me a place to live, in the back, which I love it already. But anyway, that's where I came from. But my father was Force Dewey, and he was a retired major of the Wichita Police Department. He was a very honest and trustworthy person who would never willingly not follow the rules. He instilled those ideals on me and his family, and I would like to assure my neighbors that we had no intention of being dishonest when our contractors applied for the permit to build my mother-in-law accessory home. So this home is solely for me, and then when I no longer need it, my daughter, who is moving in, they have a daughter who was diagnosed with ASD, autism spectrum disorder. And in her adult life, she'll need a place to be close to them. And for that time, anything can happen. And I know they had, in their letter, they had some parking worries, but we've provided with the driveway back to the carport with ample parking for me and anybody else that wants to park there. So that, and they also had concerns for noise and not being a quiet neighborhood. The neighborhood, that wasn't me making the noises, I don't think. We're directly under the airport flight path, and there's a railroad to the west of us, and a Zoo Boulevard, and the 235 bypass to the north of us. So I don't think that I would be adding to that noise or confusion. And unfortunately, I guess the original permit was not correctly pulled, but this has been corrected with the proper permit according to the SF5 zoning rules, and this dwelling complies with all the requirements. So that's it.
All right. Are there any questions for the agent? I guess I just have one. Okay. Has it always been your intent to have this be like a mother-in-law suite or an accessory apartment? And I guess the original permit, was that known at that time that that's what your intent was?
I didn't. The contractor, Burwell Construction, they pulled the contract, and I didn't know. I'm not up on that. So and they didn't say anything to me about it not being the right one. So I thought it was.
I guess what I'm getting at is I'm trying to figure out how a permit was issued that doesn't comply with how this property has been zoned and not having conditional use, and that's probably not anything that you can answer. I just know that that's the question that I have on that.
Okay.
So. Yes, Mr. Hartman.
Are you in agreement with the 6 recommendations that they put on the application?
On number 4? Is that what you meant? I mean,
well, there's 4 up here, but then the approval, they listed 6 other items which wouldn't be rented out for a period of less than 1 week at a time.
oh no, you mean like for a,
B&B.
oh heavens no. Absolutely not. I'll sign, and they would sign too. I mean, I would rather sell it to my daughter than strangers to the neighborhood anyway.
You want to read those 6 just to make sure you're okay with them?
the other one, I don't know if it was on if you saw item number 1, but there needs to be a site plan provided.
I thought that we did that.
It wasn't adequate.
You don't have that yet?
I mean, that's why we used the aerial, because the site plan that turned in wasn't adequate. And
Right.
dimension control.
Right. And so that's why I emphasized that, was that we would need to have that. Yes, Mr. Wadle?
Yeah, just a reminder, we'll have to repeat some of that so folks who are remote can understand where we're at. But there's a discussion going on right now about the site plan that was submitted, and it wasn't quite up to specs. So we've used the aerial for the purposes of the PowerPoint, but there is the intention that one would be submitted, and it is a requirement. It's one of the recommended conditions.
Yeah, that's what I was. Okay, any other questions or comments for the agent? Hearing none. Is there anyone in the council chambers that would like to address the commission on this? And if so, you can come forward and state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes, and you'll have a chance to rebut any of the comments that are coming forward now. So, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Matthew Sondergaard. I'm an attorney with Fleece and Gooing, and I represent address 1900 Epic Center, 301 North Main. I represent some of the concerned neighbors. Bill kind of covered some of the issues, and I do want to go over a little bit the permit issues. So the building permit was pulled in December of 2020, and it was for an addition to an existing garage. Again, no mention of an accessory apartment. Sewer permit was pulled a couple days later. Again, sewer will be connected to a garage. Service request earlier this year in March. The comment states the applicant took an existing shed and is remodeling it for a guest house / man cave. Conditional use application for accessory apartment wasn't filed until 4.5 months after the initial building permit was pulled. And as Bill mentioned, construction was occurring over that entire period. Substantial issues with the structure. Again, as we see in this permit process, it's unclear exactly what the use is going to be. They claim it's going to be a mother-in-law suite, but they've listed it as a detached garage, as a mother-in-law suite, as a guest house, and as a man cave. And then there's also the issue of a possible long-term rental as permitted under the conditions. Again, this unclarity as to the use goes past just the current owners, but any future owners as well. Again, there's also an issue with the change in the character of the neighborhood. Possible use as rental could increase traffic on the streets, and as I understand, the streets are already fairly crowded. Use as accessory apartment could decrease property values. This use is limited, as we kind of discussed earlier. A future buyer would have to be looking for a very specific use to be interested in this type of property, thereby lowering the price the house could obtain. So we're requesting, as you can see, there's clear opposition by the neighborhood. They feel like they've been taken advantage of due to how the structure is nearly complete without the proper permits being pulled. Applicant has built much more than originally requested and permitted for in the original building permit. They fear the change in the neighborhood's character, and they don't feel like they've been listened to throughout this process. As such, we request that the conditional use be denied. This allows the original use in the building permit as a detached garage, and if conditional use is approved, we ask that the use be further restricted so that there's no short-term or long-term rental. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Hearing none, thank you.
Thanks.
And is there anyone else in the council chambers that would like to address the commission on this? If so, you come forward and state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes, and try not to be repetitive of what the attorney just presented. So,
my name is Ford Duke, and I live next door to the people, and I've lived there for 65 years, and they've lived there about 45 years. We've always been good neighbors. They've always done everything they're supposed to do in the neighborhood, and very friendly, and we know all of them. They're good people, and I see no problem with this deal. doesn't bother me. It's not gonna affect my property value, and it's not gonna be a bad thing to have a family still there with the mother and the children. So we're in favor of it.
Okay, thank you for your
Thank you.
testimony. Are there any questions for the speaker? Hearing none. Is there anyone else that would like to address the commission in the council chambers that would like to address the commission on this item? Go ahead and come on up and, yeah, come on up, and you'll need to come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Kevin Rout, and I live across the street from Marcia Haig. And I grew up in the neighborhood. My folks had the old farmhouse just west of here. I was there ever since I was a kid. I used to play in the neighborhood. I'm fond of the family. A lot of the concerns that we have as a group, there was 12 of us that received a letter a month and a half ago requesting zoning. Some of the issues that the majority of us have is the original permit was constructed, the original permit was pulled as an addition to an existing garage. The second permit, somewhere down through central inspections visiting the site, it was obvious that this was much more than just a garage addition. The builder that pulled the permit, obviously there was a dollar evaluation that was pulled that was pretty substantial right up front. They knew what the intended use was going to be. Zoning, this should have never gone this far without a zoning change approval right up front before construction ever started. A lot of the neighbors, we feel deceived. We feel we've kind of been lied to. We think we've kind of been taken advantage of. There were so many inadequacies. There's so much falsehoods that's gone across this permit process that somebody needs to be accountable. I mean, obviously, it took the third or fourth site visit from central inspections to determine this actually is not a garage. It's not a garage addition. Obviously, the use is something else. Now that it's almost finished, we feel that, like you said, we've been deceived as a neighborhood. We all love the family. I adore the family. It's the whole process, the long-term effects. If the home's ever sold, I had the chance to move into this very quiet, very well-maintained neighborhood by choice. And I walked away from neighborhoods that had rentals, accessory, other places. It does bring in some people that we're not comfortable with inside our neighborhood. It's like you said, it's a very quiet, very well-maintained neighborhood. And the intent right up front was obviously to have Marcia live in it. The permit was false up front. In my opinion, it should just go away. If Marcia wanted to live in the home, the problem is the long term that becomes the rental property, and it is going to devaluate the price of our homes. I was hoping to have a real estate agent here today. She couldn't make it because of illness.
Your time is up. Do you have anything else that you need to add? If not, then we'll see if there's anybody that has.
I'd just like to say, the contractor that pulled the permit knew what he was doing right up front. Somebody needs to be accountable for him. We just feel that this has been shoved down our throat for no reason at all because of the permit and the emergency zoning, what has to happen right now without adequate time.
Okay. Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for the speaker?
Yes, I have a question for the speaker.
Yes, Ms.
Was your information about the use of the building coming from the family who lives there, and they're the ones who told you it was going to be a garage? Or is that simply from the permit process and the mistakes
Then,
made?
when I'm a contractor, and when we file permits right up front, one of the questions is it going to be habitable? Yes or no? That's in the, there's a plain document. I wish I would have had a copy of a permit. That question is asked right up front through the permit process. It's like you said, the zoning should have been performed before a shovel was even turned.
So the family didn't tell you this is going to be a garage. It was the contractor in the permitting process. Is that your understanding?
Correct, and like you said, I think there was some deception with the permit process. I found out about that Marcia was gonna, that Monica and Billy were gonna move into the house about 4 months ago. And it took, I believe, 3 inspections from central inspections to realize that though this is not a garage. Like you said, I think that.
Okay, thank you. You answered my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the speaker? Hearing none. Is there anyone else in the chambers that would like to address the commission on this? If you could please come forward and state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes for the record, and if you could present some new testimony that we haven't heard already.
Well, I'm Carol Kearns. I live at 1623 Westland, which is directly across the street. Marcia told me in March, personally, that she was going to move into the garage, and the kids were going to remodel the 2-car garage. Not knowing that anything was already pulled, any permits, she knew she wasn't attaching anything to a garage, and told me so. The night after the last zoning commission came out, Marcia and her daughter Monica showed up at my front door, wanting to know why all the neighbors were upset. So I told them things were fraudulent. Monica cried that her mommy needed her close because she's a nurse and she might fall. Well, I live alone and I could fall too. I don't expect my daughter to live in my house and me to live in my she shed in the backyard. Nor would I ever rent it out. All of our homes are investment properties. How would you like to lose $50,000 on an investment property because there's a rental across the street? And that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Are there any questions for the speaker? No. Hearing none, thank you for your testimony. Anyone else in the chambers that would like to address the commission? Excuse me. Hearing none, or seeing none, yes. Go ahead. Come on up and.
It's the applicant.
You're with the applicant?
I am.
Oh, okay.
I will be buying her house.
Okay.
So I don't know, I guess I could wait until the closing part if you would prefer.
Yeah.
But I could also clear up any other questions that anybody might have.
Let's just see if there's somebody else that wants to.
Let's see if there's anybody else in the council chambers. Hearing none or seeing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to address the commission on this case? If so, you state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes. Make sure you unmute. Anyone that wants to address the commission on this case at 1612 Northwest Lynn Avenue? Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the agent or applicant, and now you have 2 minutes to rebut. Thank you, Mr. Nix.
My name is Monica Graff, and I will be residing at 1612 North Westland. We actually had a letter, my husband wrote a letter that we were going to send to all of our neighbors, our new neighbors, that I would just like to share right now. Our friend that's a lawyer recommended that we didn't until after this hearing, just because. But I would like to read it now because it helps explain everything that was. And just to clarify, there was already a detached back garage back there. So, and that has been there since the house was there, since I grew up there. So, but this was written on May 21st from my husband, Billy Graff. So, dear future neighbors, my name is Billy Graff, and I have been married to Monica Haig Graff for the past 21 years. I'm writing to explain what we feel are misconceptions about what is happening at our home in your neighborhood at 1612 North Westland Avenue. We are hoping to buy and move into Monica's, which is me, lifelong home, which is currently owned by her mother, Marcia Haig. As many of you know, Marcia and her late husband, Roger, have lived there for over 45 years and raised 7 children in the home. The house is much too big for only Marcia, who is now in her 70s. My wife and I have 13-year-old quadruplets, and we outgrew the house that we owned for the previous 16 years. Our last house was located in a neighborhood on the northwest tip of Wichita I had grown up in, as his grandparents had lived there for his entire life. When we decided we need to get a bigger house, Monica, Marcia, and my sisters came up with the idea of converting the detached garage in the backyard of Marcia's house into a mother-in-law suite. My own family knows how invaluable it was for my wife, who is a registered emergency room nurse, kids, and I to be living 2 doors down from my grandmother, and I was instantly sold on the idea of my wife and kids buying her childhood home. It made sense for us. We would have a much bigger house. It made sense for Marcia. She would be able to downsize without a complete upheaval of her life and not have to leave her home. And their family, they knew their mother would always have someone there to take care of her. As for what we want to make sure is conveyed to all of you, I want to make this as clear to you as possible. We will never rent the addition out to anyone. We hope Marcia lives forever, but if something happens to her, we are not going to use it as a vehicle of profit for ourselves or our family. We won't use it as a rental home. We won't use it as an Airbnb. We won't use it as anything like that at any point. It will never be rented out to anyone for any amount of time. The entire property will remain a single-family unit, and nothing is going to change that. We are not building a rental house in our backyard. Another misconception that we would like to explain is that it is perceived we tried to skip a step in permitting. That is incorrect. Our contractor met the city worker who wrote the permit when he came to the house and told them exactly what was happening with the building, and the person who wrote the original permit made the mistake.
Monica, your rebuttal time is up. Do you need another minute to?
I just have like 2 paragraphs if you don't mind. Okay. So everything was taped off and labeled on the concrete floor. That was everything that was going to be, the counter, the sink, bathroom, etc. We didn't find out about the need to apply for the conditional use permit until about a month ago because we didn't know the original permit was incorrect. The last thing I want any of my neighbors to think is that we are dishonest. The neighborhood we left meant everything to me personally. I grew up there. My children grew up there. Your neighborhood holds the same spot in Monica's heart. From being in Monica and Marcia's family for almost 25 years, I admire the character of this neighborhood, and I would love for my kids to go through their high school years living here. It is beautiful, and most importantly to me, it is safe and quiet. I want to raise my kids in a place like that. When we left our old house, every one of our neighbors were upset to see us leave. They understood we needed a bigger house, but they said they enjoyed having my family as neighbors. I truly believe as you meet and get to know my family and me, you will enjoy having us as neighbors as well. I look forward to meeting all of you and being a good neighbor to you. While we understand we have to wait to move Marcia into the addition until after the hearing, we are hoping to move into the house in the next couple of weeks. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And I did just want to say that Mr. Longnecker said before, that the city government, the meeting, it was unanimously approved by everyone on that meeting. This SF5 zoning does permit an accessory apartment. We will comply with all of the city staff's conditions, and I was unaware. I thought my husband had already got the site plan to Mr. Longnecker, but I will contact the contractor and get that to his email as quickly as possible.
Any questions for
Monica? Sorry.
No, I know who you are. Any questions? Hearing none, thank you for
Thank
your
you.
testimony, and at this point, we'll bring it back to the commission for action. Yes, Mr. Warren?
I've got a question for staff. Bill, since this is a conditional use, and it seems to be, for me anyhow, the issue is, you know, would I have approved this before if this had been done at the very beginning? And for me, the issue seems to be rental. Is there anything that we can do in the conditional use that would preclude it ever being allowed to use it for a rental of any type?
Nothing in the zoning code, no. I mean, you know, when we make presentations on these accessory apartments, we note that there's nothing in the zoning code that says they can become rental, or they can be used by a family. There's nothing in the zoning code that
Nothing in the zoning code, but I
limits
think
this.
some of the ones that we've seen in the past, that the restrictive covenants for the area, allowing accessory apartments, but are restricted from rentals. So I guess what I'm looking for is here's a building that is similar to other buildings in the neighborhoods, and if the family wanted to finish off a garage and live in it, they could do it. So I mean, what we're dealing with here is whether we're looking at a garage that's attached to the house or an accessory apartment. So I don't have a problem with that, but I understand the neighbors with turning that into a rental situation, in effect, a business, and I'm looking for a way to do that.
Well, restrictive covenant would go with the property.
Right.
And, you know, quite frankly, I'd have to check with law to see how we could do that. I've never applied a restrictive covenant to this type of development before, but whoever would, you know, at such time when this property would pass ownership, that restrictive covenant would be part of the title if it was, again, I'm going to have to get direction from law on that because we've never done it before on this type of development.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Warren,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, this is Jeff Van Zant, Assistant
Yes.
City Attorney. The only way that this could be done would be if the owner applicant agreed to the self-imposed restriction of a restrictive covenant. We, in the past, with other developments, when we said no rental, it was because the agent for the applicant agreed to it. So if they were to agree to a restrictive covenant, that could be one way. But we don't have any way to require no long-term rentals or actually Airbnb rentals at this point in the city. And even if there's a restrictive covenant, you know, our enforceability would be difficult, but it could be done, but it would have to be through the voluntary consent of the applicant filing a restrictive covenant on their own property.
So if yes, Mr. Waddle?
I did want to point out that staff are currently working for the City of Wichita on efforts to review and possibly update our regulations regarding short-term rentals, so Airbnbs, VRBOs, those kind of things. But that's a process, that's a work in progress. Currently, our regulations stipulate that it would either have to be a conditional use as a bed and breakfast. If they're going to do rentals for less than 1 week, it would either have to be a bed and breakfast, so the owner would have to be on site or management on site, or they would have to be rezoned for a hotel motel. So that's kind of the framework of the ground floor where we're at right now. And then again, we're working with staff on looking into what other cities are doing, what best practices are, and that is something that'll be coming to you at a later date.
Mr. Dool, did you have a comment?
Well, I think, excuse me, Mr. Van Zandt has maybe answered the question, but in the past, when the subject of restrictive covenants has come up, we've been told that's not the purview of the city, it's the purview of a homeowners association.
No homeowners association.
Now, Mr. Van Zandt, could you help clarify what you said? Because the way I heard what you said was if there was a way, well, go ahead and explain what you were saying. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
In a previous case, there was a question about whether these kind of facilities could be rented out or not. And at the time, it was a developing subdivision, and there were statements made that the covenants in place at that time by the homeowners association prohibited rentals. In that case, it would be, the homeowners association's ability to enforce that covenant. In this case, I doubt if there's anything like that. Now, so the only way to restrict something is for somebody to put that restriction on their own property. Now, keep in mind, if a restriction was onto this facility in question, it would not necessarily apply to or any other house in this area, in this neighborhood. If another house, instead of being sold, were to be rented, the city can't prohibit that. Not the accessory structure, but the house itself. So it would have to be on both properties. But if that were the case, then the house next door at some time could be rented out, and nobody could do anything about it at this time under the city regulation. So it's a little bit different. This doesn't have a restrictive covenant in place through a homeowners association that was, formed at that time. Does that make sense for the question that was asked?
Okay.
And
I'd like to make a comment.
Mr. Green?
Yeah. Ms. Foster, and then we'll come to you, Joe.
First, the neighbors all seem to be assuming that even if it was a rental, that would automatically generate traffic and lower property values, neither of which assumptions I think they've brought any facts to back up. And then in the second place, this kind of multi-generational housing is a trend that I think we're going to have to deal with in the future, and trying to take this one instance of it and saying, well, we just won't let them ever rent it out and that'll fix the problem is not going to give us a long-term planning solution for these sorts of situations. That's all.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Wadle, and then Mr. Johnson.
Because the rental issue seems to be such an important point of discussion, I just want to make sure everyone is clear that according to the Unified Zoning Code, renting of this structure for less than a week is currently illegal unless they get a conditional use to operate it as a bed and breakfast, which would require the owner or manager to be on site, or they get it rezoned to allow for hotel motel use.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Mr. Joe Johnson?
Yeah, I was away for a little bit, but what am I missing here, Mike? Why don't we just leave this a single-family home?
Could you restate your question or your comment?
I missed who is going to live in it?
Yeah, the daughter and son-in-law are moving into the existing house. The accessory apartment is going to be lived in by the mother of the daughter, and that's going to be her house with daughter and son living in the big house.
It seems like it's just an addition to the house and a family's living there, even though it's an extended family. Why would we change the zoning?
We're not changing the zoning. We're just adding a conditional use to have an accessory apartment.
But so, why would we call it an accessory apartment? It's just an expanded single family.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what we're trying to get to, is having it be a conditional use for an accessory apartment. Yes.
I understand that, but if your mother-in-law came to live with you, would you have to change it?
Whoops. Somebody's time is up. So what was that question again, Joe?
I said, if your mother-in-law came to live with you, would you have to change your zoning?
I know. No. But this is still this is a separate building. It's not an attached.
It looks like it's
building
attached by the carport.
Yeah.
What am I missing?
Mr. Warren?
I'm ready to make a motion, but.
Okay, go
Can I
ahead.
have one comment before we make a motion?
Oh, yes, Mr. McKay?
In the letter that the applicant's daughter read, she said that the garage was existing beforehand. Is that correct?
Yes.
So they didn't go out and, if you go back to the permit, they're gonna remodel a garage for a place for somebody to live. That's all they've done, in my opinion. And I'm looking at the aerial photo here a while ago, and I see 4 to 5 additional outbuildings behind these other houses that shows in the aerial photo. So, Mr. Warren, make the motion.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I've come to the point I'm comfortable with the unlikelihood of this becoming a rental, and so therefore I move to approve as presented with recommendation of staff.
Second.
Okay, it was moved by Mr. Warren. I didn't catch this. Who seconded it?
Bob.
Oh, Bob, sorry, Bob. I was looking right at you. So it's been moved and seconded to approve with the staff comments that we have listed here. And those have been agreed to by the applicant. And yes, Mr. Johnson.
I'm gonna support the motion. I drove by this residence and drove by 3 times before I knew what the hell I was even looking at. It sets way back. I could easily see it being a pool house, a number of different things back there, and I could see someday somebody puts a pool back there and it becomes a pool house. Lots of vegetation, you can hardly see it, it matches a house. And anyway.
Plus the dam approved it.
And I appreciated Ms. Foster's comments concerning the, it's kind of a generational thing where we're seeing more and more situations where whether it's in platted subdivisions that are new or currently, in existing neighborhoods where kids are taking care of their parents and are providing a place for them to live. And so I will be in support of this motion too. So are there any other comments or questions on the motion?
I'm absolutely, Mr. Chairperson?
Yes.
I don't know that MABCD, the Building and Codes Division, is within our jurisdiction, but I would like to make sure that they're fully aware of this particular contractor's actions in this case. I fully support the use of accessory dwelling units and believe this would add value to this property. I'll be looking for one of these situations sometime soon. But I do think we should make sure the contractor's actions are reported or noted or in whatever way we can make that happen.
Okay, I see.
Mr. Chairman,
I see Mr. Wadle jotting something down.
Yep. Mr. Chairman, this is Jeff Ansant. I have made note and contacted MABCD to inquire about this, as well as the inspector's understanding and knowledge of this as well. So we will be investigating how it got to this point.
Thank you. Hearing any other, is there any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries, I believe, 12-0 now, with the departure of Mr. Nix.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay, next we have PUD 61, PUD, sorry, 2021-0008. Mr. Williams.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Matt Williams, Associate Planner. This is PUD 2021-08. The applicant is seeking to amend the Ballpark Village Planned Unit Development number 61, located at Maple and McLean. The intent of this amendment is to allow for increased building heights on 2 parcels within the PUD. Parcel 5 is located on the northwest corner of Maple and McLean, and parcel 6 is located on the northeast corner. If you can see, yeah, so this is parcel 5 here and parcel 6 for when we're talking about those. The applicant is requesting to increase the maximum height of parcel 5 from 50 feet to 85 feet, increase the maximum height of parcel 6 from 50 feet to 95 feet, and then adjust the floor area ratios for both parcels, as well as the PUD's total permitted floor area to align with the increased height allowances. The Ballpark Village PUD was established to provide a signature destination on Wichita's Delano and downtown riverfront. The site is being developed through city partnership with the Wichita Wind Surge minor league baseball team and is guided by the Ballpark Village Master Plan. And then Paul, if you can move forward to the height map. As seen on this height restriction map, parcels 5 and 6 of the Ballpark Village PUD are surrounded by properties with a height limit of either 80 feet or no height limit. And you can see that all of the light blue, that's most of that is zoned CBD, and it has no height limit. This red down here, I believe, is general commercial, and it has an 80-foot height limit. And then here are the two parcels that we're talking about with 50-foot height limits. And that does include the 16-story Hyatt Hotel here across the river. Properties around the subject PUD have a mix of commercial zonings, and they're developed with a mix of commercial uses, including a church, some offices, an ice rink, things like that. The PUD amendment would continue to allow the property to be in conformance with our existing plans and policies. The future growth concept map from the comprehensive plan identifies this area as appropriate for residential and employment mix within the established central area. The future land use concept map from the Delano neighborhood plan identifies the site as part of the Ballpark Village. And the amendment is in conformance with the Ballpark Village master plan. Both parcels 5 and 6 are located at Maple and McLean and located within the context of the Arkansas River connection as depicted by the plan. The plan also includes a section on view corridors. If we could go to that, the view corridors map. The plan states that eye-level views should be maintained from pedestrian and vehicles at the midpoint of the bridge to the commercial and stadium building frontage lining the west side of McLean Boulevard. So that's this view right here. So it's hoping that we maintain the view from the middle of the bridge to these buildings, which this would have no effect on. And then the other view corridor would be between McLean and the river. It says that commercial development between McLean should be configured to maximize eye-level views from McLean to the river corridor. Views through the commercial development at windows, gaps between buildings, and or open seating decks are encouraged at intervals up to 150 feet. The plan does not include a height recommendation, and the requested increase in height for both of these parcels aligns with this goal. Staff recommends approval of this request as requested, and then I can go through a few photos here. So this is one of the parcels. This is parcel 5 on the west side of McLean. Next photo. This is parcel 6 on the east side of McLean. Next photo. Here's looking west. Next photo. South of the site. Next photo. And that's more of parcel 6. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? From the commission? Hearing none?
I have a question.
Matt. Yes. Cindy?
I have a question for Matt.
Yep.
Matt, will the increased height in these buildings have an impact on people's ability to sit at the ballpark and see across the river? Because I know that it seems like previously when there was a discussion about these buildings, the height was limited for that reason because of the view across the river from the ballpark.
I know from, well, first off, I would say that parcel 5 and this other yellow parcel here, which still has a height restriction of 50 feet. If those are developed at 50 feet, I don't believe that you're going to be able to see from the ballpark to the river. The way that the ballpark has been built around if you're sitting at the ballpark, you can see the tops of some buildings across the river, but you can't see the river directly. So if these were built to what they're allowed to now, which is 50 feet, that would have the same effect, in my opinion.
So if they're built to 50 feet, it would have the same impact, but if they're built to 85, that's going to be a different impact, right?
Well, I believe it would be the same impact.
Oh, you think
50 feet or 85 feet, you're not going to be able to see the river either way from the ballpark.
Thank you. That was one of the things that I remember being discussed when the ballpark was going to be built, was that it's being built in such a way that you would still be able to see across the river. So I guess that didn't really happen.
If you could show me that view corridor map one more time.
And this is Scott Wadle. Just to point out that the sites that we're talking about in relationship to the Hyatt are south of the Hyatt building. So as you are looking towards downtown, that is predominantly north of the Hyatt building. So these will not obstruct your view of the taller buildings in downtown.
Great point. And I think when, Ms. Miles, when we first talked about this, the kind of goal was to be sitting behind home plate and looking off to the northeast at downtown, like Scott just said, and this should have no impact on that.
Any other questions for staff? Hearing none, if we could have the agent or applicant come forward and, hey, you guys, figure it out. You could state your name and address, and you have 10 minutes.
I definitely don't want 10 minutes, so.
Rock, paper, scissors with someone back there?
Yeah, Scott Rigby with the city manager's office, and
Take your mask off, that probably won't happen.
with economic development. I guess I'm the applicant for this. Is one of the challenges we face as we work with the development community to consider these two sites is because of the skinny or narrowness of the site, particularly the one east of McLean and west of the river, is that narrow parcel creates development challenges. So as they look at that, they say the way to work with that is to provide more vertical opportunities for development. And so that's the primary reason that we would request and support the effort to increase the height. Understanding the view corridors are still important, and as we talk to staff, if you were to drive down the road and you could still see through the building because of windows on their first floors or whatever, that would still allow visibility for the river corridor. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the applicant? Yes, Mr. Warren.
Well, I guess when I'm looking here, whether it's 50 foot or 85 foot, the decision's been made that it's not going to remain as green space. Is that a safe assumption?
That was already determined in the initial PUD or PAD. PUD. Sorry, I get my states correct here. My previous state where I worked was PAD. Yes, so it's always been anticipated for development opportunities. It has just become more clear as we've worked that this development community is like, this is really challenging spaces, so if you really want us to do something, we've got to provide some more vertical opportunities.
Agree.
I'm not sure I wouldn't like to see the green space, but if that decision's been made, whether it's 50 foot or 85 foot, makes no difference to me.
And we'll still, and just as a city's commitment, we will still have opportunity to do riverbank improvements, I'll call it between the river and to the face, I'll call it the east face of any type of development on there. So the goal is, as we talked about in the PUD, is we want to encourage businesses to be able to expand out into that green space. If you think of open air ICT that the city just renewed, is how do you build a cafe or the restaurant, not just on the McLean side, but also on the river side.
And it appears as though you still have the pedestrian bridge that's going to fit in there somewhere.
Once we decide what happens on the east side of the river, yes.
Yeah. Okay, are there any other questions for the agent? Hearing none, is there anyone in the council chambers that would like to address the commission on this, please come forward and state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Vince Hancock, 406 South Vine in the Delano District. I am the president of Delano United and the vice president of the Delano Neighborhood Association. There's a couple things that are at issue with the staff report. I'm not saying that this is a no deal down the road, but I think there's some issues as it's currently presented that may need to bring this discussion up at a different date. First of all, the planned unit development for the ballpark village was first raised about 1.5 years ago as we were discussing what is now known as the 2019 Delano Revitalization Plan. The entire PUD was written by the Office of Economic Development. We read through it, it made sense, we approved it. They had the ability to include any height restrictions they wanted or not wanted in that plan 1.5 years ago. As we were working on this 1.5 years ago, this parcel didn't even exist. It was unplatted. Now, if you look at the parcel in the Sedgwick County property tax records, you'll find out that it's not even completely set up correctly. It, instead of listing it as a commercial mixed use, it lists it as recreational land. Last time I checked, I'm not really going to be working on my swing on a sloped piece of grass. So they've got more than one issue of how it was originally platted within the last 1.5 years. It just was not done correctly. And now they're asking to fix that. What else have they not thought of? It's something we should think about. As you will see on the staff report, this has not gone in front of the District Advisory Board yet. It goes in front of them next Monday night. That's highly irregular. Normally things will go in front of a DAB before they come to you. That's something you should consider. As well, these are my 5 final points. It has not been brought to the neighborhood association. It's not required, but it would be nice. It's not come in front of the group that actually does work with the development and of Delano, which is the Delano United. We hadn't heard anything about this until it appeared on your agenda. Those are things to consider. Then the final 3 points, in your staff report, it specifically says that there are attachments for the PUD language and the PUD drawing. They're not in here. Missing information. And speaking of PUD drawing, it'd be nice to have a site plan. We have no idea what's going to be built on this because there was no site plan proposed. So with that, I'd stand for any questions.
Do we have any questions for the speaker? Hearing none, thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else in the chambers here that would like to address the commission on this item? Hearing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to address the commission on this case? The Ballpark Village planned unit development. Anyone virtually? Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the agent. And you have 2 minutes to rebut.
To respond to the question about a site plan, unfortunately, I can't create a site plan without knowing what development opportunities are. And as we work with development communities, again, they're asking, for more vertical opportunities before they can create what really would work there for the site. So until we determine whatever the final height is, until that happens, it's unlikely we're going to get a site plan that can move forward without that determination. So regarding the initial question, I think I'll work with the MAPC, and then engineering also helped us with the original PUD. These 2 sites were identified in the original PUD for development opportunities. So I'm a little bit unclear what the public comment was. So with that, I'll stand for further questions.
I think the other point that he may have been making was the letting the Delano Association know.
Again, we're just happy to follow the process. We're not, whatever the process needs to be, we're happy to do that.
Yes, Mr. Wadle?
Yes, we can address that, and perhaps Matt Williams can explain the process that we use to notify the neighborhood and surrounding areas.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say, just like every case, we sent letters to the neighborhood president for the Delano neighborhood and property owners around this. We had signs up. It got posted like normal. DAB, we do like to send it to the DAB before Planning Commission, but just in this case, the way the DAB's lined up, it happens to be next week, not this week.
And I would emphasize that this case is not unique in having those circumstances in terms of scheduling. That has happened in multiple cases, and especially with our robust agendas that we've had lately, we've seen a fair number of cases that have gone to MAPC first and then we'll go to the DAB later. So this is not an isolated case in that circumstance.
Right. Well, and the other thing I understand is that we like DABs are advisory in nature, and everything's going to be, final decisions are going to be made by the council, city council itself. Anything we do. So, okay, with that, I'll bring it back to the commission for action. Yes, Mr. McKay?
I'd like to make a motion to approve, subject to the staff comments.
Got a motion to approve?
Second.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Bill Johnson. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion
Mike,
carries. And are we?
I'd like to abstain. Mike,
I'm sorry?
I'd like to abstain.
Oh, anybody needs to abstain?
I do.
Okay. So our number is what, 901 or 1001?
I believe it's 10:01.
Okay, all right, thank you. Next case.
Yes, good afternoon, Planning Commission. Philip Zievenbergen with planning staff. The next case before you is Zone 2123. The applicant is requesting a zone change from single-family residential to LI Limited Industrial for a 9.73 acre parcel located 900 feet south of East 55th Street South and on the west side of South Hydraulic. It's at 5727 South Hydraulic. A portion of the property that fronts Hydraulic, as you can see on the zoning map here, is already zoned LI. The applicant is seeking to rezone the remainder of the property on the west side for manufacturing and warehousing. The property is currently vacant and undeveloped. The property owner owns Phillips Southern Electric. They have experienced incremental growth with their history in Wichita. They purchased this property with the intention of moving all or even just a portion of their current operation to this location if or when additional growth occurs. This would include the storing of equipment, both indoors and outdoors, as well as their manufacturing and machine shop that repairs their equipment. The timeline and extent of what would all relocate to this location is unknown. The proposed activities are possible within general commercial zoning. However, a welding and machine shop or any manufacturing would have to comply with supplemental use regulations 3D6N, which states that the portion of ground floor area fronting the main street would have to have office space, display, or wholesale or retail sales. So to put that in layman's terms, if they wanted to do their operation at this location, the front portion of the square footage of the building up against Hydraulic would have to have offices, a display area, or retail sales or wholesale sales of some kind. They could not just have the machine shop or warehousing by itself or manufacturing by itself. At this time, they don't know if the office component would be moving to this location to allow it to be under a general commercial zoning with those supplemental use regulations. Therefore, they're asking for the zone change to limited industrial, just more as the insurance policy that if, depending on how they grow, if all they needed to move was their machine and welding shop and manufacturing, that they would be able to do so under the zoning that they would get approved for. Property to the north is zoned single-family residential, except for the immediate corner at 55th and Hydraulic, which is limited commercial. One parcel is developed with single-family uses. That is the one most nearest to this property. The parcel at the corner is undeveloped. Property south is zoned SF5 and limited industrial. As you can see, it shares kind of the same frontage zoning that the subject property has. There's a single-family use as well as an appliance retail store that fronts Hydraulic. Across our property to the east, across Hydraulic, is zoned single-family SF5, limited commercial as well as general commercial, in addition to limited industrial. A portion of the limited commercial and the SF5 zoning is developed with a single-family dwelling. The remainder of the limited commercial and general commercial properties have a CUP on them. A portion of the limited commercial property is developed as the Peachtree Park, and it's right there at the corner of 55th and Hydraulic. The general commercial and the limited industrial zone properties are undeveloped. Farther east, sorry, that's a typo in your staff report. Farther east of these properties is zone SF5 and is developed as the City of Wichita's Water Resource Recovery Facility, which is a fancy way of saying the sewer treatment plant. Property to the west is zoned single-family SF5 with single-family dwellings. Those are those properties along South Patty Street that you can see on the map in front of you. Because this would be zoning to an industrial property, that would be a budding residential property, compatibility height standards apply. That is out of Section 4C4 of the Unified Zoning Code. The compatibility setback, there's also compatibility setbacks, which would be a minimum of 25 feet. Staff is also recommending that no industrial uses be allowed within 200 feet of the west property. And so basically closest to the residential properties that are developed along South Patty, having basically a 200-foot buffer where no industrial uses would be allowed. They would have to start at that point and go closer to Hydraulic. They could have parking in the back for employees or visitors, but in terms of actual industrial uses and storing of equipment, that would have to not happen in that 200-foot area. The compatibility height standards limit it to not exceed 35 feet within 50 feet of a property line. The further back away from the property line that you get, you can go higher than that. So for every 3 feet you get, so if you're 53 feet back, you can have 36 feet in height, if that makes sense. So every 3 feet away from the property line you get, you can go an increase in 1 foot in height. With the property surrounding it being residentially zoned as well, the landscape ordinance and the Unified Zoning Code requires screening, lighting, and landscaping standards. In general, the lighting standards require cutoff luminaries, and if you're within 200 feet of 150 feet of the property line, that can't exceed 15 feet in height. The screening standards is a minimum of a 6-foot solid screening fence abutting the residentially zoned properties. There is the opportunity to achieve that with landscaping and earth berms. Landscape screening must achieve the same effect as the solid screening of a 6-foot fence. The site also must comply with screening of mechanical equipment. And I misspoke about the lighting. It's not 150 feet, it's 200 feet from residential zoning. They can't exceed 15 feet in height. I apologize, I did have that in there. The landscape ordinance requires a landscape buffer on all sides that abut residentially zoned property. The minimum standard is 1 shade tree per 40 linear feet. So they would have to have a significant investment in landscaping. However, if you go to the aerial image real quick, you can see that there's a considerable amount of existing vegetation. Existing vegetation can be used. Though they do not have to evenly space them, they can do the calculation to say, if a property was 80 feet long and you required 2 trees, they wouldn't have to evenly space them at 40 feet. That just gives you the calculation of how many trees you need to plant. We would want some landscape buffering along the further west portion of the site where there is not the hedgerow of trees. we would definitely require some planting there. A site and landscape plan would have to be submitted for approval, and we would take that into consideration. Understanding that the west portion of the property abuts residential, actually developed residential properties, staff is recommending that the landscape buffer on the west side be 1.5 times the landscape ordinance. That would effectively require them to have 13 trees there on the west property line. The landscape ordinance also requires a landscape street yard along South Hydraulic, and depending on the size of their parking lots, they may be able to require to have parking lot trees. Any parking lot along an arterial street is required to have parking lot screening as well. The property is unplatted, and so it would have to go through the platting process in order to obtain any building permits. That's a separate public hearing from this, and that takes care of any concerns regarding drainage, access, a whole number of other things that related to site development standards with the subdivision regulations. The site has access off of South Hydraulic, which is a paved 4-lane arterial with a sidewalk on the east side. Municipal water and sewer services are available, but may have to be extended depending on the applicant's development. The west side of the property has access to South Patty or East 57th Street as it's platted. It's really just kind of a nub of 57th Street. That is platted in the Coon Edition. That is a paved 2-way local streets with no sidewalks. This could provide access to the west side of the property, but because the Coon Edition is a residential subdivision, staff is recommending that a dedication of complete access control be put in place along the west property line so that this property would not be able to use South Patty as access to the property. This would prohibit any commercial traffic cutting down the residential street in order to access this property from the west. They would all have to come through Hydraulic. There could be a contingent in there that it could be used for emergency services. A lot of this can be handled through the platting process. Conformance to the comprehensive plan, the community investments plan identifies the site as industrial, residential, and agricultural or vacant, if you want to go to the land use page. And this is on the future growth map. The industrial uses encompass, the full diversity of industrial development, typically found in a large urban municipality. Concentrations in manufacturing, warehousing, distribution, construction, research, and technology have close proximity to highways and airports, and may have rail service. In addition, the recommended protective overlay will preserve the west portion of the subject site to buffer between the residential properties to the west and from the proposed industrial uses on the subject site. In this way, the provision of the protective overlay uphold the spirit and the intent of the adopted policies and plans. The rezoning request is not in conformance to the South Wichita Hayesville Area Plan, which was adopted in 2002. It shows that the site is identified for appropriate for residential development. However, the immediate area has established commercial industrial zoning fronting the arterial roadway. Overall, staff is recommending approval of this subject to Protective Overlay 372. Item number 1 limits the uses. I won't go in those in grave detail unless you want me to, but generally prohibiting many of them that would be significantly detrimental to the area. As I mentioned before, item number 2 is at the time of platting, the applicant shall dedicate complete access control along East 57th Street, except for emergency purposes, and that would allow for fire department standards and other emergency access. Item number 3 is requiring the screening. Item number 4 is a compatibility height setback adherence. Number 5 is the provision for the 1.5 times the landscape buffer standards for the Wichita landscape ordinance along the west property line. Item number 6 is that no portion of any building or outdoor storage may occupy the west 200 feet of the site. The area can be used for off-street parking. Item number 7 is that storage of equipment and merchandise shall be allowed outside of an enclosed building, only in compliance with the screening standards of the zoning code. No outdoor storage or work area shall be permitted within the compatibility setbacks or the west 200 feet of the site. No required off-street parking spaces or loading areas shall be utilized for storage, and items stored outside shall be screened from view from south hydraulic and from ground level view of any residential uses or residential zoning. Number 8 is the screening of roof-mounted equipment, loading docks, trash receptacles, ground level heating and air conditioning, and other mechanical equipment. This signage is restricted back to limited commercial per the sign code, as opposed to what would be allowed in limited industrial. And the applicant shall have to submit a site and landscape plan to the planning department for review and approval, subject to or prior to the issuance of any building permits. The findings for our recommendation: the zoning and character of the neighborhood. Though there is single-family residential to the west, the majority of the single-family residential properties around are not densely developed. There is presence of unrestricted limited industrial zoning on the east side of the property, as well as general commercial and limited commercial zoning subject to a community unit plan. Further east there is the water resource recovery facility already in operation. Across hydraulic, again, there's unrestricted limited industrial zoning. By restricting the subject type with the protective overlay, it provides a buffer between the more intensive zoning and the residential uses nearby. How is the site suitable as it's currently zoned? The portion of the site that's zoned limited industrial can have limited industrial uses that are unrestricted. There's no protective overlay on the property right now. The rear portion is restricted to single-family SF5 uses, extent to which the restrictions will detrimentally affect nearby properties. Approval requests will allow redevelopment of site for limited industrial uses as restricted by the protective overlay. The applicant intends to develop the entire subject site with manufacturing, machine shop, and warehousing. The restrictions of the protective overlay should minimize potential negative impacts to surrounding property. The property has been vacant, historically has been used for single-family and agricultural uses, but it is unknown how long the site has been vacant and not been used. The relative gain to public health, safety, and welfare, as opposed to the hardship imposed by the applicant if it's denied, approval will allow redevelopment of the site to provide an opportunity for a local business to continue to expand in the future and provide services to the local community. Denial would represent a loss of economic opportunity to the applicant and the property owner. Talked about the conformance of the policies and plans. Approval of the request would generate no additional impacts to community facilities. Existing public infrastructure at the site will accommodate the uses under the proposed limited industrial zoning. This did go before the District Advisory Board 3 last night. They voted to recommend denial of it with a unanimous vote for that recommendation. Kathy, was there anybody who spoke in opposition at the meeting? There was one who spoke in opposition to at that meeting. I can go through the site photos here. It was a large site, so I've got a few of them. I'm starting on the west edge, so I'm standing at where South Patty / East 57th Street ends. And so I'm standing at the edge of that, looking directly east at the rear part of the subject site. You can see that it's just kind of an open pasture or field right now. That fence right there obviously would have to be updated to a 6-foot screening fence, and that's where the 1.5 times the landscaping buffer would be installed. Next picture. This is looking north at the house right at, that's abutting the property on the west. Next picture. This is looking west from where I was standing. That's South Patty heading up north towards, if you go and then it turns right. Those are the houses over there. And then the next picture is the house to the south. I'm standing pretty close to the property line, so these houses do get close to that property line. That's why we are recommending that 200-foot buffer in addition to the additional landscaping. Next picture. Now I jump over to the hydraulic side. This is looking west at the property from hydraulic. You can see the existing drive at that location and the considerable number of trees, not only in the middle of the property, but those along the property lines. Next picture. This is looking northwest. That's the single-family residential zone property. Further in the background, you can see cars on 55th Street. Next picture. This is looking north along Hydraulic. This is the property on the east side that is undeveloped. I believe that's the property that is zone limited industrial right now, directly in the foreground. You can see the park and other residential uses are much further away. They're closer to 55th Street. Next picture. This is looking to the southeast. Again, this is limited industrial zone property. If some of it might be zone single family SF5, and in the way back, you can see where the sewer treatment plant is. Next picture. This is looking at the property directly south of the subject property. This is that appliance repair or retail store. The fronting of this property, what you're looking at right now, is in limited industrial zone land that is unrestricted. Next picture. And that's about it. With that, I can stand for any questions.
Questions for staff? Yes, Ms. Foster.
Just like a little clarification, can we go back to the aerial, please, for a moment? Philip, can you, I'm having trouble with the scaling. Can you sort of tell me where the 200 feet, how far over that goes?
Yeah, so the property itself is about a quarter mile long. So it's a very, very big piece of land. So 200 feet, if you see on the south property line, if you could follow the red line and then you see that first clumping of trees, does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's my approximation of about, and actually probably even a little further than that. But knowing the scale of the land is about a quarter mile long, 200 feet. It's not a huge buffer in comparison to the scale of the property, but it still provides a bit of land that cannot be used for industrial uses.
Okay, thank you.
What's the dimension north and south?
North and south, I believe, is about 600 feet, if I remember correctly. I apologize. I don't have that right offhand.
340.
Oh, it's 340? I apologize. So north and south is 340. So if you take that dimension and turn it sideways, reduce the width of it, and you get approximately what 200 feet would look like.
Okay.
Any other questions for Philip from the commission? Yes, Mr. Warren.
Philip, what was the general discussion at the DAB? What was the?
I will actually defer to Kathy Morgan with the number of cases we have. We had to play planner bingo.
Okay.
So she presented for me.
The general discussion was that this neighborhood along South Hydraulic was, yes, it did have some commercial uses along South Hydraulic, but they wanted to maintain the residential development, opportunity for development along South Hydraulic. Pretty much the same as what we've been hearing regarding the case at 68th and Hydraulic and the one north, what was that at 55th? 63rd and Hydraulic.
Okay. Any other questions for staff?
Well, I don't have any questions for staff, but I do just want to make a comment. If you looked at your 2035 Wichita Future Growth Concept Map, which you have in your packet, and you look at what the future growth is supposed to be for this area, and you look at this particular lot and how much of this lot, that particular lot is actually already zoned for industrial use, and you look at the purple that's zoned for industrial use around in that area, by rezoning this as industrial, we are continuing to, in what's somewhat similar to a rural area, because this property was previously used to have horses on. They had horses on this property for years. You're allowing this to continue to expand into industrial uses in the middle of a residential area, and what's supposed to be, according to the future growth map, concept map that we established when you developed the community investment plan into more industrial. And that's already been a struggle along South Hydraulic with non-conforming uses being used as places that they're not supposed to be used as. So I just want to make that comment. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, do we have the agent or applicant on, I think, virtual? If you could state your name and address, and you have 10 minutes.
This is Mark Dayton with Young and Associates Engineering. We're the agent.
Okay, we've got that. You have a presentation, or you have anything to say about your case? And
No, sir. We'll take any questions.
okay, do we have any questions for the?
Do you agree with staff comments?
Do you agree with the staff comments as they are presented in the report here?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any questions for the agent? Hearing none, is there anyone in the council chambers that would like to address the commission on this case? Seeing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to address the commission on this case? Anyone virtually that would like to address the commission on this case? Rezoning from SF5 to limited industrial, located at 5700 block of South Hydraulic. Hearing none, bring it back to the commission. I think we'll just bring it back for, Mr. McKay.
Ben's staff is recommended for approval. I'll make a motion that we approve, subject to staff comments.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. McKay to approve the staff comment, second by Mr. Dool. Are there any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries 10 to 1.
10-1.
10-1. Okay, thank you. Next case.
Matt Williams, Associate Planner for Planning. This is Zone 2124, a rezone from SF5 to TF3. The applicant is requesting the rezoning of a 7.37 acre tract of land from single family to two-family residential. The subject property is generally located south of West 47th Street, south and west of South Meridian Avenue. The tract of land is intended to be phase 2 of an adjacent addition that will allow for duplexes. Property to the northeast is owned by this developer and platted as Fox Run Addition. The subject property is currently undeveloped. Properties to the north and west of the subject site are zoned SF5 and are developed with single-family residences. Properties to the east are zoned TF3 and undeveloped, and property to the south is zoned MH manufactured housing and is undeveloped. The subject site will be platted following approval of this zone change. The subject property has access via South Chase Avenue, and all municipal services are available to the property. The requested TF3 zoning would continue to allow the property to be in conformance with our existing plans and policies. The community investment plan depicts the subject site with a current land use of agricultural or vacant, and the plan categorizes this as encompassing areas that are developed or used for agricultural production. The plan states that pockets of low-density residential uses likely will be developed in these areas along the urban fringe. Staff is recommending approval of the zone change as requested. I've gone through what the zoning and the plans say about this area, but staff also feels that approval of the request should have little, if any, significant adverse impact on nearby property owners. Because of the similarity of residential use, the zoning code does not require screening between single-family and two-family zoning districts. Development of the property with the requested zoning is not anticipated to have significant adverse impacts on community facilities or resources. Staff has received a letter in opposition. A copy of this should have been at your seat. We've also received 6 protest petitions that were turned in prior to today's meeting, and those will not be valid because they were received prior to today's meeting, but I sent out letters to those people letting them know that they were going to need to resubmit those. If you go to the next slide, please. Here's an aerial. So most of the neighborhood to the north of the subject site is kind of in the middle of being developed right now. Next slide. Next slide. Here's some photos of it. So this is the property looking to the west at some single-family residences. Next slide. Here's looking south on that South Chase Avenue. Next slide. Here's some of the single-family residences to the north. Next slide. And kind of looking to the east at some of that vacant property. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on this.
Any questions for staff? I can see from the zoning map that TF3 is not unusual in this area.
Correct, yeah, it looks like.
You're saying there's a significant amount of TF3 north of this site.
Yeah, the addition to the north looks like it was half single family and then half TF family, and that extends to the south of that, which is just to the east of this property as well.
Yes, Ms. Foster?
There appears to be only one road access on the very north end of this. Will this come back to us after it's platted to review the traffic potential issues, or is this zoning change our one shot at looking at this?
That should be probably dealt with at the platting stage. I'll let the agent kind of speak of when that might come to you guys.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff at this point? Hearing none, if we could have the agent or applicant come forward, and you have, state your name and address, and you have 10 minutes.
Kirk Miller, K.E. Miller Engineering, 117 East Louis. The access and traffic will be addressed at the planning stage, not at the zoning stage, and I'd be glad to answer any questions, or try to.
Any questions for the agent from the commission? Hearing and or seeing none, I'll open it up to anyone in the council chambers. If you have any questions, come forward and state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, my name's Curtis DeWitt. I live at 5114 South Custer. We've been through this before, and the original plan was no duplexes on the west side. They were all supposed to be built on the east side. And you got 2 housing areas here, one they're building now and one I live in. You've got one way in, one way out. This one's gonna be the same way, one way in, one way out. And now they want to put rentals at the end of the road. There's no way for the people to get out except through a single-family house. And why at the end of the road here, when they had the opportunity to build the duplexes on the east side, they didn't do it. So now they want to shove it right behind us, all single-family homes. If they want to build family homes, let them build them. But no duplexes, no rentals. It devalues our property, it will, in the next 15 to 20 years, and everybody knows it. So if these guys want to build their houses, let them build their houses, but no duplexes. I mean, Mr. Warren, the last time, let them decided on the percentage, and I thought it was a done deal. And just on the east side, where it says it's undeveloped, well, it is developed. They just put in another 100 trailers. Everything over there is rental, from 55th or 47th to halfway to 55th Street. And it's all rentals and trailers. Everything over here is houses. Why ruin it? That's all I ask. But I can get, there's a lot of people that don't want this, and I can get the petitions. So, and you've seen part of them. So, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker?
Thank you.
Seeing none, thank you for your testimony today, sir. Is there anyone else in the chambers here that would like to address the commission on this case? Seeing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to address the commission on this case?
Yes, I would like to.
If you could please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes, ma'am.
My name is Crystal White. I live at 5214 South Mount Carmel Street. My main issue is my family moved here because it was on the outskirts of town. I can sit outside my back window on the sliding glass door, and I could see nature, and it was wonderful. It would bring my mood up. It would help my, anytime you get upset, most people understand that when you get upset, you want to be alone and be, I don't know, I want to be outside. People behind me has built a, basically a huge barn, so I can't see it, but the little bit that I can see, they now want to turn in duplexes. And whether anybody wants to admit it or not, it is going to depreciate my value. I've been working on the house to increase the value, and it's already decreased because they put houses right next to us that are basically cookie cutting houses, and they are not worth the same value as ours, but yet they're being sold as that. I think it needs to be what he originally wanted, all single family homes, and he shouldn't be able to go back on that just because what economy changes, and so they want to push more people into that area because housing shortage. I don't think it's fair for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? Hearing none, thank you for your testimony today. Is there anyone else virtually that would like to address the commission on this case?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. If you could state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Yes, sir. Thank you. My name is Chris Rasmussen, and I live at 5026 South Mount Carmel Street. We've lived in this addition for over 15 years now. And when we moved in, this plot of land where they're building those new homes now was just farmland, right? So that was very appealing to move into the neighborhood. And since then, they've rezoned that to put in single family homes, which, okay, that's fine, but now they're proposing to put in duplexes, which also could be rental property. And we're totally against that. That ruins our property value, as well as when you open up 50th Street, which I'm sure they're proposing to do, that's going to increase all that transient traffic through our neighborhood. So I'm totally against having this rezoned. It should just stay single family, and that's the way it should be. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody who has a question for the speaker? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Rasmussen, for your testimony today. Is there anyone else virtually that would like to address the commission on this case?
I add one more thing, honey. I'd like to add one more thing. Crystal White, and
ma'am,
I wanted to.
Ma'am, you've had your opportunity to speak. You're not able to come back and add anything else to your comments. So, is there anyone else virtually that would like to address the commission on this? Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the agent for rebuttal.
It sounds like a lot of the complaints are they're worried about it being rental property. I would just like to point out that even if it was all single family, it could still all be rental property. Be glad to answer any questions.
Do you have any questions for the agent? Yes, Mr. Warren.
I know this is a plating question, but is there room at the south end of this to allow for access out, or is this going to be a one way in, one way out? Do you have any way of knowing that at this point?
We haven't drawn up the plat yet, so we'll review that.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll bring it back to the commission for action.
Move to approve.
It's been moved by Ms. Foster to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Been seconded by Mr. McKay. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. I think that concludes our, no, I know. We have our last case, Conditional 21-00015. Well, yeah. True.
You're a hoot.
I just wanted to see that look on Scott's face.
Yeah.
Yes.
Kathy Morgan from Planning Department. This is a conditional use on limited commercial zoning for an automated car wash with vacuum bays. You can see the zoning on your map. To the north of this property on Coolidge is Fire Station number 7. We have been in constant discussion, Trish, we have been in constant discussion with the applicant and their representatives about how this is going to flow there. This does meet the purpose of the community investments plan. Car washes are allowed by conditional use in limited commercial zoning. So if you look at your map, what I want to point out is the vegetation along the river on the east side of the property. Now go back to the zoning map, please. So this is going to come up. So you see this property is divided between limited commercial and SF5, and this is only applying applies to the limited commercial property that will be developed. We have across the street to the west is the Dillon's, that's the Dillon's development, the Dillon's store. There's a tire store, and then there are some small retail businesses there. And then to the south is the Wendy's. I can't remember what's, that next building is where the Huddle House is, and then the next building over, I think, is Pizza Hut. The building at the southeast corner is Twin Lakes Bank. So there is commercial development. It's situated within that commercial development. Across the river is some general office and multifamily housing. You can see in the upper right corner, that's the Twin Lakes Apartments. There is all public utilities available. 21st Street is a major arterial. It does have some dividers in there with access to allow left turns and right turns, but it's not an open turn lane all the way through there. We did request that the applicant provide us with a traffic study because of the location of where Coolidge comes into 21st Street and where North Woodrow on the south comes into 21st Street. That intersection happens to be signalized right there. There is no signal on Coolidge. So with the traffic study, what we were looking at was number of cars going through that area, number of accidents, and you'll see on page 3 that I looked up some information about what the most recent accident reports were and gave you a link so that anybody interested could check on those kind of things. We did recommend approval and some of these things have already been vetted. Submitted for the City Public Works and Utilities Engineering to look at drainage, that kind of thing, collection of wastewater from the car wash, an emergency preemption control that would allow the fire department to trigger the traffic light at Woodrow and 21st so that they could get out onto 21st Street either way. Now the screening standards, and that's what I was talking to you about, the reason for the aerial is since this parcel is all owned by one company, that the screening is going to be waived and allow that tree vegetation along the riverbank to be allowed to meet that condition because the SF5 zoning area is not buildable. That's in a floodplain. So we did make a concession with that. There will be, obviously, because of 21st Street, there will be street landscaping requirements, and that will be per the zoning code. Let's see. We added signage, which is typical of for the limited commercial, and developed. The site shall be developed in conformance with the applicable federal, state, and local regulations, and that is addressing the stormwater wastewater management is what that refers to. We do have an architectural control item in there so that This is across the street from a community unit plan, and also to the west of it is another community unit plan development. We typically ask for architectural controls of the new buildings to be of a certain color range, material types, that type of thing, so we don't end up with metal buildings with glass, just glass. And these applicants are not recommending that. They have, in your packet, they have submitted an elevation plan of what, that's their trademark building with grays and some red accents, black lettering. That is their traditional building. You also have a site plan showing that the access is going to be off Coolidge, and there's a double lane in, and then a double exit lane. And this access is, go back to the aerial if you would please, Paul. So you can see where the fire station is and the red line outline boundary of the property. That access to the car wash is just south of that northernmost property line of the subject parcel. Let's see. I've included the supplemental use regulations for car washes for your information. The buildings, we've discussed this with the applicant, a maximum of 25 feet, and that allows for parapets and whatever. We have suggested or made a condition that on-street parking on Coolidge, but from the fire station south to 21st Street, that there be no parking allowed in that area. Anything, dumpsters, anything like that has to be enclosed from street view. And let's see. We did 14, no parking be allowed on either side of Coolidge in order to, in some cases, they have, depending on the weather, they may have a lot of cars go through there, so we wanted them to be able to use that one lane to queue if they have backup on site. Let's see. So the recommended approval is based on the commercial use in that immediate vicinity. There are very well established neighborhoods surrounding this property to the south and to the north. And we have had, I think you all have received several packets of emails from the neighbors regarding the development of this project at that location. So staff is in support of this, or recommends approval rather. The Wichita Places for People, this is within that infill area, and it does support the infill and redevelopment of neighborhood uses. It is already well connected with bike paths, sidewalks. I mentioned that in the staff report too. You can get to downtown on the bike path. You can go out to Sedgwick County Zoo on the bike path, and on the sidewalks you can walk out there. So it has good connectivity to the neighborhoods surrounding all the way to downtown. So you have in your map, or in your packet too, we created a visual so you could see what the 350-foot notification area was. You have the zoning map, you have the future growth map, their site plan, and then the last document that you have is the report, the traffic report that we requested regarding how much generation of traffic there will be, how it would affect potentially the safety of the fire station being north of there. That was done by a consultant that Cochran Engineering engaged. And I'm not going to go through all of that. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And from there, I think I'm done with the presentation.
Okay. Are there any, yes, Mr. McKay?
Kathy, you mentioned no parking on Coolidge Street. You said from the fire station, is that the south property line or?
From at least where the driveway into the fire station is, south to 21st Street.
Well, I would think that you might want to extend that north to the north property line of the Dillon store to the west. That gives more access for the fire station.
Okay.
That's my only concern, is if you stop it there, then you're hindering the fire department. But if you go through that north property line on the property to the west of the Coolidge, you're almost clear past at least to the building of the fire station.
Right, and I think 23rd Street is just to the north of that row of duplexes that you see up in the upper left corner. So it could even go up to 23rd Street and south to 21st.
This would just back into those properties, the residential properties to the north. That south property line of them or the north property line of the commercial.
Okay, I'll make that note.
Parking from there.
Any other questions for staff from the commission? Hearing none. If we could have the agent or applicant and you come forward, and you've got 10 minutes. If you could please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Trish Voth, Folston Ziefken, 1551 North Waterfront Parkway, Wichita. Thanks for your time. We have a lot of information we've gathered to share with you. I know you've been here a long time, so our goal is to be as efficient as we can with this 10 minutes to try to provide information that would be helpful to you, but not overly duplicative. It's been very important to Club Car Wash this entire time period to understand what the concerns or questions might be surrounding this property and to be responsive. So as Kathy alluded to, when we first heard that questions about traffic and the intersection and the fire station, that there were questions, Club Car Wash took it upon themselves to delay coming before you for a month to obtain a traffic study report and make sure we had thoroughly worked through that topic and present you with accurate information. Similarly, we have been through all of the public questions and comments that have been forwarded on to us to make sure that we understand them and that we've been as responsive as possible. So I'll cover a highlight of some of those topics and then turn to questions so that we can make sure that we're spending our time on what's important to the Planning Commission at this point. What I would like to start with is, as you know, you're going to make a decision based on the zoning factors, the 7 zoning factors, and one of them is hardship to the current owner or applicant. And so I'd like to start with the current owner, Joan. If you want to come on up, Joan. Joan took time to come here today. I know she submitted a short item in writing, but she also wanted to speak. And we've been working or communicating with Joan. I did provide as much written information as I thought might be helpful to the Planning Commission in advance, a couple memos so that if you wanted to review them in advance, you could. So I tried to provide a sketch of some of the information about the property and hardship to the owner applicant, particularly in light of some of the questions about change of the use from some of the most recent uses. So Joan's family has owned this property since the 50s and has developed the property and has been, dedicated to the area and working to manage it the best that they can since the 50s. And she has worked for years, most recently, on leasing and trying to keep the properties full and fully usable. And that has been difficult and continue to be difficult, particularly as the buildings on site age. The buildings on site right now are from the 60s and 70s and are, have continued to show their age and their wear. What she did most recently with current tenants is work with them on their lease terms and amounts the best she could. Despite that fact, they still fell behind. And the fact it just didn't work out anymore for the tenants that were most recently there to continue to operate at the site. They were not interested in purchasing the property. Joan had to make the hard decision about a year ago that it just wasn't very feasible anymore for her family for her to continue to manage the property, and it probably needed to be sold to someone else, possibly redeveloped. And at that point, she made the property publicly available for sale signs out, but none of the former tenants were in a position to acquire. And so she's done what she can. She's visited with the former tenants. I think they're all on good terms. But I'll let Joan go ahead and say a few things herself.
Hi, I'm Joan Kincaid, and I'm representing the family. I just wanted to say that we have, like she said, we've been there for several decades. Okay, thank you. I can breathe.
And we can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me. We've been there, I know we said about 60 years, but I think it's longer than that. The property is in pretty bad shape, and I'm ashamed of it right now. It needs someone that can take it over. And I'm real impressed with Club Car Wash. They seem to have a unique way of working with the area. And I was concerned about the same thing everybody else was. What about the river? What about the fire department? Because we originally sold the property to the fire department where it's at. So I think that it's going to be a good thing for the community. It's something they don't have. And it's kind of hard to put another strip mall in there with empty buildings or empty spots. I just don't know. I can't come up with nothing else. And when they were interested, it made us happy. So I hope that you approve it for us to get them. Thank you.
So again, as to that factor, it would create a hardship on the owner applicant as she's been trying to actively sell the property for over a year. To move on to other topics and other factors, I know that one that has come up has been any impact on the river and any environmental concerns. As Kathy already mentioned, the site is designed with a system in place to collect all water, and it's got a capture system in place so that there are all water and runoff that's used on site and from vehicles will be captured and collected and will not run off into the river. So, Club Car Wash is as concerned about the environment and the river as others, and they have designed a system to make sure that topic has been fully addressed. And again, we have Kurt here, who's an engineer who helped with more of the particulars on it, and he would be happy to answer any specific questions as to environmental. Would you like me to pause to let him do that?
Yeah, if you could, because I did have some questions about the runoff. I understand that storm water has approved your drainage plan, but it's unclear as to what is actually occurring with the runoff or the water from the car wash
Absolutely.
itself.
And for the record, Commission, good evening. My name is Kurt Daniels with Cochran Engineering, number 8 East Main Street, Winsville, Missouri, and we are Chiefs fans, just so you know. So that's
All right.
important. So what we are doing, all the water within the club car wash area, the SS5, which is the riverbank and into the river, we're not touching. Anything we are touching, we're collecting all water in the tunnel wash and in the parking area. So where they vacuum their cars, where they pull out any drippage that may come off, what we put is a chamber system, which isn't required by the city of Wichita. And it runs down the main drive lane for where you have vacuums on both sides. There's a chamber system. It's an arched polyethylene pipe system. And what the water does, it all collects in there. There's a geomembrane on the bottom of that with what we call base rock, large diameter rock. What that allows is a lot of the particulars and everything to settle out. Once it does settle out and it has time to settle any particulates out, then it does flow into Wichita's storm system. So Club Car Wash and Cochran, we did go above the requirements. What we call a water quality system. So it's an expensive system, but then we do feel adequate water and clean water, cleaner than probably what has been discharged from that site in many, many years. Because if you look at it now, the parking lot with the existing, I know in the traffic report, it showed some of the dumpsters with mattresses and everything laying outside. I mean, we are treating every ounce of water on that site, and I think it's 100 times better than what it is today. Does that explain it pretty well?
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions on that?
Basically, you do that on all your locations, correct?
We do that on a lot of them, yes, yes. Some of them don't require any type of that. If we have an on-site detention or something like that, that we can let water quality. We don't always do a chamber system, but we are doing some type of water quality in most all the sites.
I guess I think the public needs to know that, all car washes have to deal with the same thing. Whatever water falls on the ground ultimately is going to get to the river.
Sure.
And so, what's happening here is an improvement on nothing. So I appreciate that.
Isn't it, okay.
If you do nothing, that water goes directly from dirty into the river.
Absolutely.
You guys are treating it.
Absolutely,
So.
we're treating it because present day, that water is discharging right into the river with oil or whatever's dripping off of cars as they park there today. What we're doing is every drop of water that hits the pavement as the cars come out of their wash, we collect it, we treat it before we put it back into the river. So it is a much better water quality, absolutely. Thank you.
Great. Another topic that we wanted to make sure to touch on is traffic and safety, because I know there were questions about that, including any impact on fire. Again, we obtained a traffic study report, and you've received it, which concluded that the car wash use does not increase the amount of traffic, the peak traffic that comes by from the peak traffic according to ITE standards for the most recent uses that have been on site, which were a tavern and a restaurant and an abandoned bank and a strip center. As Kathy mentioned, the property is zoned limited commercial already, and that zoning classification allows many other uses, some of them being a higher density of traffic, such as a convenience store, or if the site would be redeveloped with 2 fast food restaurants with drive-thrus, just for an example. And so the traffic study concluded that by allowing a car wash on site, in lieu of the site being redeveloped for a use that's already allowed by right, that wouldn't require any additional approval, it is possible that you actually have a lower traffic count than what would occur with the current zoning. Another improvement on traffic and safety with car wash, which would likely not occur with a different type of redevelopment, is that the car wash is a single site user. There won't be more than one business operating on site. And because of that, the car wash is going to reduce the access points off of 21st and Coolidge to just one location of an in and out access points at the north end of the site on Coolidge. So you're going to eliminate having two more separated access points on Coolidge, and you're going to eliminate all three access points on 21st. And that has a likelihood to make it safer at that intersection, including safer when fire and other emergency vehicles leave. The traffic study specifically looked at any impact on the fire station responding to calls and concluded that the car wash would not have a negative impact, and in fact, as I just described, the car wash would actually have a positive impact on the traffic maneuvers and the traffic congestion that might occur at that intersection, and that what occurs today or could occur with the current zoning classification. On that topic of traffic and safety, and including the fire station, we do have our traffic engineer here. Would you like me to pause? Are there any follow-up questions about the traffic study, traffic, and safety? None?
Can anybody speak?
Pardon?
I was wondering, can anybody speak? I didn't know if it was virtual or
Mr. Williams? Mr. Williams, at this point, it's dialogue is between the commission and the agent for the car wash. You will have your opportunity to speak in a few moments.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
That traffic analysis concluded, again, that no adjustments need to be made, including to accommodate the fire traffic. However, the fire department did request that some additional preemption equipment be provided to just help the fire department out with navigating that intersection. And as part of being a good community partner and supporting the development area, the applicant is willing to contribute towards acquisition of that requested preemption equipment. Moving on, another topic that came up was compatibility with the neighborhood, and I'll be brief on this one. As you read in staff report and then also our supplemental materials, there are multiple city plans that affect this site, 3 of them actually, and under all 3 of them, the car wash use is compatible and conforms with those particular plans. Last, it might be of interest to you, as Kathy was mentioning, the reason we're here is because of the zoning code wording that a site is within 200 feet of residentially zoned property. And if you look at the map on the screen, will work just fine. As Kathy was describing, the application area is only the part that's zoned LC, limited commercial, which is only part of the property, the red part within the black rectangle. So the single family that's within, or sorry, the residential zoning that's within 200 feet is actually not currently used as residential today, and in fact, cannot be used as residential. And so, unlike other instances, including the last 3 at least car wash cases that you heard, where there was actually residential within 200 feet, or that residential could be built within an area zoned for residential within 200 feet, those are actually not our facts here. Car wash, if you're not within 200 feet of residential zoning, is a use permitted by right under the zoning code. And that just helps you with aligning that the car wash use here is a very good fit for the neighborhood and under the current set of plans. The single family, or sorry, the residential zoning that is within 200 feet that brings us here today is the residential zoning on our own property. that Kathy already described, as well as the residential zoning just to the north, which is on the city's property where the fire station is located. And then the third point is the residential zoning that's on the Dillon's lot that's actually part of the CUP area, and it's designed for a buffer zone from an actual residential lot. So with that, at that point, I'll pause to take specific questions that Planning Commission members have for the applicant.
I've got one. You stated that the car wash would be open to sharing the costs for a preemption traffic signal.
Right.
What does that mean? And to us, what would the costs be for that type of signalization? And why would not the car wash be willing to accept the entire costs for that, since if it were not for the car wash, there probably would not be a need for the preemption?
Sure, I'm glad you brought up that question. I was trying to zip through things. So something I should have mentioned earlier, because I'm sure you want to, you often ask how the applicant feels about the staff recommendation and proposed conditions. The applicant concurs with the staff recommendation for approval. This staff report proposes 15 conditions. And what we did for you yesterday, after we were able to receive and work through the conditions, is we put together a short 2-page memo that identifies, as to the 15 conditions, the applicant is comfortable agreeing to most of them, so all 15, but with some of them with some adjustment or clarification in the wording of those conditions. And so what we've provided to you is you have the staff report with a set of conditions, and then our memo that identifies proposed edits, and one of them goes to your question. So it's condition number 2. The staff identified as a condition to participate in emergency preemption control costs. The city traffic engineer identified that they estimated those to be about $15,000, and that's the reason that we identified it would be a reimbursement of up to $15,000.
And if it goes over that?
We think $15,000 is reasonable, and particularly, I mean, to finish answering your one question, the traffic study and report concluded that the car wash use is not having an effect on the current traffic conditions for the fire department. In other words, allowing a car wash use at this property does not adversely affect what the fire department's dealing with today in terms of the intersection and traffic conditions. And so that's why the change in use is actually not the reason for the preemption signal request. It was just it was a topic that came up, and we decided that to be collaborative about it and be willing to take on that cost. Did you have some other answer to that, Brian?
If I may. Brian Kuhn, 2440 North Coolidge. I live 7 houses north of Fire Station. I'm the author of the traffic study that was done. One of the things that's important in this case was that the existing preemption, I went out on site with traffic maintenance, traffic engineering, and fire. We were all on site. I wanted to make sure everything was functioning. When we got there, we determined that the preemption wasn't actually working currently. And that was a concern, is traffic maintenance was unaware. About 5 years ago, I had personally worked on it and made sure that it was working. It is no longer working. Rather than invest in repairing it with the existing equipment, the fire department would like to have remote actuators for that signal. And when we looked at it, we were thinking that all of the equipment it would be a box in the cabinet and actuators for three remote actuators, one in each vehicle and then one in the station itself. And that should be somewhere in the 9,000 range total. If worst comes to worst, we approve 15 that Club Car Wash would kick in, which should be more than necessary. And the 9,000 doesn't include probably the offset that should exist, because traffic maintenance should probably have effort in going to repairing that existing system. So worst case scenario, it may actually go up to 15, and that would cover absolutely everything. After talking with engineering, we're probably down to the range of 9 to 7, and with that would be traffic maintenance putting it in, so it would be possibly even less expensive than that. So the dedication is far more than is even anticipated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Are there any other questions for the agent at this point?
Great. So I was asked by our engineer to make one clarification. So the earlier calculation I got showed no residential within 200 feet, but he pointed out that there is a calculation they've made now that 200 would clip one residential lot closest. So we want to make sure that we're being cleared. So that was new information to me. The overall point on the analysis of compatibility with the neighborhood is that we do not have residential adjacent, and we've got the fire station that already exists to the north that works as a buffer between this parcel and the existing residential. We also have the river that works as a buffer and a natural major barrier across the river.
Okay, thank you.
One
Yes, Ms. Foster?
question on your memorandum where you're responding to the conditions, condition 10 about the height of the lighting.
Yes, ma'am.
You request or require to increase it from 14 feet to 23 feet. Can you give me a quick overview of the logic behind the extra height?
Yes, ma'am. This site, Club Car Wash has 3 sites in the Wichita area already in operation and others under development. And all of the sites have the 22.5-foot lighting. And so that lighting height would be consistent with that. That's also a lighting height that they had earlier communicated with planning staff about. Kurt, anything to add on that?
And not a lighting engineer, but as you typically can go higher, you can shield them. You can direct a lot of your coverage down. So the span isn't going as far, the shorter lights sometimes. And I'm not explaining it as a photometric guru would, because that's not me. But if we go higher, we can focus it straight down with some shielding and get the coverage with the proper foot candles that we desire.
Okay.
Any other questions at this point for the agent? Hearing none, is there anyone in the chambers that wants to address the commission on this? Okay, is there anyone virtually that would like to address the commission on this case? And if there is, if you would please state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, I put.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Williams?
Okay, hi. My name's, yes, Williams, and I live at 19.
We can barely hear you. Can you possibly get closer to your microphone?
That's, I don't, can you hear me?
Mr. Chairman, I will try and private message her on using our GoToMeeting system. And another option would be for Ms. Williams to try and dial in by phone. That might get a better connection that way for her.
Okay.
Text her the number?
Yes, I can do that.
Yep.
The phone number is available on the meeting agenda. Let me see if I can find the information here.
Yeah, Ms. Williams, are you hearing what we're saying at this point?
She's not mic'd on.
And if you could unmute your mic. Yeah, Ms. Williams, can you hear what we're asking you to do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I can.
And I can provide the phone number here. The phone number is, it's a long distance number. It's 1-571-317-3112. Again, that's 1-571-317-3112, and the access code is 651-544-141. And this is included on the meeting agenda as well.
I don't think we made Mrs. Williams' life any easier, right?
Yeah, I don't either. Is there anyone else virtually that would like to address the commission on this item? Caller 15 has arrived. Is this the Williams?
This is a different Williams.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, if you could state your name and address, and you've got 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Kent Williams, 1335 North Llewellyn, 67203. I appreciate the engineer and attorney's presentation, specifically with regard to the particulate clarification system that was described. My initial question is, how does your system address solvents and oils that are washing off of the vehicles? And then I'll use the rest of my time with a couple of other statements and questions, if I may, before you respond. I have several properties just down the river from your development site where we're working with contiguous river owners and neighbors through a couple organizations. One's with the Little Arkansas River Community Coalition, and we're trying to preserve the community asset that is the river corridor. And we've successfully helped Cell Tower and other developments find more appropriate locations. So what we're really concerned about is quality of life from the point of view of the river asset that the community shares. Thank you for bringing up the issue of lighting. Anything you could do to mitigate the light that spills over your project site would be greatly appreciated for people that are canoeing or walking or enjoying the river corridor as well. So thank you, and I appreciate an answer to the question at whatever point it's helpful or appropriate.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone that on the commission that has a question for Mr. Williams? Yes, Mr. Warren.
Just a quick, on the lights, I'm not sure I understood. Do you want the ability for the lights from this location to expand over in close to the river so people have access, or do you want to decrease the amount of light so that people don't have light intrusion as they go along the river?
Yes, thank you for the question. Well, we would prefer that the river remain its more natural dark conditions, since there isn't a path or bikeway here proper. So basically, controlling light spill is what we are advocating.
Okay,
so either a lower lighting and/or lighting with shielding.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for this speaker? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Williams, for your testimony today. Is there anyone else virtually that would like to address the commission on this? Anyone? Hearing none. Aaron Williams, did you ever make it back on? through the phone number?
I see that Aaron Williams is participating and is just unmuted her microphone.
There's the,
Okay.
I hope that goes through now. I don't know if I got a bad internet connection or what.
still can't make
We,
it.
we,
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
we really are not able to hear what you have to say today. Did you try calling in?
Yes.
I think in order to be able to get your testimony, we're going to have you call in. Do you have pencil and paper handy?
Yes.
Okay, if you could call 571.
One first, right? Yep.
Yep, okay. Call 1-571-317-3112. And then the access code, it will prompt you, and the access code is 651-544-141.
How long will we wait?
So the phone number again is 1-571-317-3112. And we'll give you a minute or so to call in. Yes. Okay. All right, see you.
Mr. Chairman, we've received a message from Susan Cunningham, who's participating online. And she is inquiring whether written comments sent to staff by 4 yesterday will be read by staff at this meeting. And those comments were included in your packets.
Yes.
So
Yes,
we
they
do
were.
not typically read those comments.
Yep.
To out loud during the meeting.
Oh, well, we have received those comments, and they have been read.
I do show that a new caller joined while we were waiting. Is that Miss Williams?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Ms. Williams, can you close down your computer, and maybe that will improve your phone call?
Or turn the volume down.
Or turn the volume down on your computer? Yeah, you don't need to turn it off, just turn the volume down on your computer. And then we'll be more than happy to hear your testimony.
Ms. Williams, are you there? Caller 17 just left, which I believe was her.
Ms. Williams, are you there?
I think we've given the other callers.
Okay, do we have any other people virtually that would like to address the commission on this? Hearing none. we'll bring it back to the agent for rebuttal.
Sure, and to answer Mr. Kent Williams' questions about solvents or anything coming out of the car wash, I don't know, is it possible to bring the site plan up? We do have 3 grease trap interceptors, solvent interceptors that will be on the west side of the building. I don't know if I can see them on there. They're on the west side of the building, right in the middle, but they are containment systems. Right here. Ooh, did I do that? Okay, thank goodness. There we go. Whoa. I was gonna say, maybe not let me drive, that may be a problem. Yes.
Why don't you keep your hands off the toy?
I'm sorry, I won't touch anything else, I promise. Right in the middle, and it'll show on the utility plan, but right in the middle, left side of the building, there's 3 grease trap interceptors that take care of any solvents, any pollutants, anything that comes out of the car wash. They are trapped prior to entering the system, the storm sewers. So that's how we do that. As far as light for the river corps, if I understood Mr. Williams correctly, keep as much overflow away from the river as possible and direct it on our site. Our site is our #1 concern, so that is where our focus would be, and we're going to meet city codes to make sure nothing spills out. But our concern is safety of the site, so that's where we'll try to maintain most of it.
All right.
All right.
Thank you. One other comment that might be helpful response to Mr. Williams regarding the river. One of the conditions of staff is that the existing tree line along the river be used as a barrier, but maintained. And so, and again, we have agreed with that condition. So that would allow with the existing vegetation or replacement to occur if that's needed in the future.
Okay, thank you.
So with that, again, we appreciate all of the help and time of staff, both Kathy and others, and we concur with the staff's recommendation to approve this application. As to the conditions, we are accepting the conditions. We would appreciate if those conditions be adjusted with the adjustments that we sent in yesterday in the memo. And I was able to visit with Kathy briefly about that. Is there anything on staff that needs to talk about those conditions, Kathy? My proposed edits to the conditions?
Over to the chairman to ask those questions of staff.
Great.
Yeah, so the conditions that you got here, has staff had a chance to look at these, and are we okay with what they have presented? Has Mr. Van Zant had a chance to address these?
Mr. Van Zant was sent the packet. I don't know if he looked at their proposed edits. As I recall, one of them was about the, thank you.
Sure.
One of them was about the architectural controls, and we just basically reduced or put in some additional language about split face block being allowed and that the color palette be more of a gray palette than what was put in there. The screening standards, their proposed language is fine. We agreed to the lighting from 14 feet to 23 feet. And then condition 16, they wanted to be able to request that the zoning administrator or the planning director be able to make an exception to conditions, the condition number 16 controls if it conflicts with any of the conditions 8, 9, 10, 12, or 13. And that's not unusual to request that. So there was nothing in their edits that caused any issues with the...
That set off any alarms?
Right.
Okay, all right.
I have a question.
Well, thank you. Yes, Ms. Foster?
On condition 3, the proposed text seems a little circular to me. I guess I just am not sure what it means, and I would like to be a little more sure.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I didn't see any really difference in what.
I drafted it, so I should be responsible to be able to explain it. That's right. So what condition 3 is to make it clear that when this zoning case is decided, this conditional use is allowed, then item number 1 in the list of ongoing conditions left to satisfy has been satisfied. The staff report includes that list. Staff report. So it's frankly to avoid it being circular, actually, so that the condition isn't that someone could interpret it that you have to come back and get another conditional use permit.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the agent? Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the commission for action.
Great, thanks again. Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you.
Move for approval, subject to the staff comments.
Mr. Hartman has moved to approve for staff comment. We have a second by Mr. McKay. Was that a second, or did you have a question?
Had a question about when they talked about the parking on the street on Coolidge. I brought up the fact that move it back up to wherever that.
They're okay with the parking?
Yes, we're okay with that.
Okay.
Plus, do we not need to reference the applicant's revisions to the conditions?
We need to include that in the motion.
Right.
Okay, and it's been added by Mr. Hartman. Do we have a second on that? I'll second it. Second the motion. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. We have one more item to address, and that's 5.1, DIR 2021-00003.
Yeah, Paul. Yeah, perfect. All right, this one should go pretty quick for you. This is DER 2021 number 3, Derby unilateral annexation. The City of Derby passed Resolution 2/2021, authorizing a public hearing for the purpose of considering the unilateral annexation of properties on the south side of East 79th Street South and within 1/2 mile south of Webb Road. Both of these areas this area is eligible for annexation under KSA 12-520A, and it's situated immediately adjacent to the City of Derby. Kansas statutes require that the Planning Commission review the proposal and make a finding of compatibility or incompatibility with any adopted land use or comprehensive plans related to the area. After review by staff, it's been determined that all tracts proposed for unilateral annexation fall within the City of Derby's 2035 urban growth area as designated in the Community Investments Plan and adopted by the Planning Commission. All annexation properties also fall within Derby's future land use map as identified in the City of Derby's comprehensive plan. Staff is recommending that the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission pass a motion finding the unilateral annexation proposed by the City of Derby Resolution 2/2021 to be consistent with the adopted Wichita City Council or Wichita Sedgwick County Comprehensive Plan. And here's a map just kind of showing the areas. As I said, this is on the south side of East 79th Street and then between Rock and Webb Road.
Okay. Any questions for staff on this? Hearing none. I'm sorry, Mr.
I just move we take the recommended action.
Second. Been moved by Mr. Warren, seconded by Chair to take the recommended action. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Wadle, do we have anything else that needs to be
No
brought
further
before us?
business. No, sir.
Thank you for everybody's patience. We're adjourned.
This conference is